Keep going. Okay, folks, we'll call the meeting to order in just a moment. We'll give a few seconds or so for people to log in, need to log in and so forth, and then we'll officially call the meeting to order. Karen, do you see if there's any attendees signing in?
There's one.
All right, well, it's a big agenda. Why don't we get started? I'll officially call this meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission to order for the 23rd of January, 2025. The meeting is hybrid. It's here live. I know we have a lot of people here in the room, and it's also available via Zoom. I know we have two commissioners that are on attending via Zoom. I can see them on the screen up there, at least one of them anyway. And like all these Zoom meetings and hybrid meetings, it is being recorded, so just be aware of that. If we probably will have public comment periods, so I'll give the instructions for that when that time comes. So per usual, we'll start with the roll call of commissioners and make sure we can see and hear everybody. So starting to my right here, Andrew Bernhardt, here, Jeff Bowles, here's here, my left, Scott Clark, where did I see him?
Yep, here.
Oh, down. Oh, down there, he's eclipsed by Mr. Neumann. Christopher Fay, we see you on there, you audio.
Here.
Oh, yeah, we hear you.
Great.
Okay, and Alan Marquis.
Here.
Okay, we heard you too, good. Ed Neumann?
Yes, here.
Here, okay, Chris Sartell, here is right here. And Mark Sandrone is absent, and the Chair Glenn Richards speaking. And also, here, our planner, Kate Sullivan, and Plan Director Andrew Port, and taking Gretchen Joy. Okay, so we'll get started here. We have a couple of demolition delay applications. The first one we're going to take is 90 Federal Street. Is the applicant here to address that? Okay, that's you. Okay, are you familiar with what we've got to go through here, or should I just run briefly?
Please do.
Okay, so we have to first determine if it's almost going to be, well, I think it's going to be historically significant, kind of by definition in the audience, but whether it's considered for preservation or not, we'll consider that and take a vote on that. If it is considered for preservation, there's a public hearing where you present your demolition plan, which would include your rebuild plans and so forth. And then there's another vote on whether to, well, preferably, it should be preferably preserved, which would impose a demolition delay. However, we can then take a third vote as to whether the plans are acceptable either as they are or with some alteration and so on. So that's the gist of the whole thing. So what we'll start with is just the determination. Well, it's by ordinance, it's what this one's 1845, right? So it's by definition, it's historic, but so it's is there anything you want to say regarding just its historical nature? Because if not, anyone have any questions about that? Because if not, we can go right to a motion on to whether it should be considered for preservation.
I do have some, there are two small additions to the property that we propose to demolish.
Right.
And is it possible to find that they are not historically significant in and of themselves?
Yes. That's possible. Those were later added, I presume? Those were later added additions?
Yep,
Okay,
yep. They seem to be frankly, less than 75 years old too.
okay.
So that, I'd like to have that determined if possible. Basically, the materials, the framing materials indicated that they were less than 75 years old.
Okay. I think the best way to deal with that. Well, what we would do I think the best way to handle that is the consideration, when you say consider for preservation, that just means that we can continue the discussion. It doesn't necessarily mean anything other than that.
Okay.
So during the whole, so when we get into the whole demo plan review and all that, that's when you get an opportunity to talk about the condition of those, the age of those, and whether they deserve to be saved or not, and all of that. Does that sound reasonable?
That's okay.
And your name was, by the way?
I'm John Sarkis.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, if no one has any other question about historical significance, a motion that it's historically significant and considered for preservation would be in order. Someone would like to make such a motion.
I could make the motion and for historical significance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Chris, I heard Chris first. Chris Swettel, that is.
Yeah, not Chris.
Okay, so the motion is that it's historically significant and considered for preservation. So we'll go around the region. Andrew,
Yes,
Andrew, yes, okay. Bill,
Yes.
okay. Scott Clark.
Yep.
I think that was a yes, right?
Yes, sorry.
Chris Fay,
Yes.
thank you. Alan Markey,
Yes.
thank you. Ed Neumer,
yes,
thank you. Mr. Sawtell.
Yes.
The chair makes it unanimous. Okay, so it is considered for preservation. So we'll move on to, it's really kind of your show, John, for a bit. Let me write down the name here. Hang on a second. It was, Sarkis, you said, right?
Correct. SARKIS.
Thanks. So why don't you tell us what you're planning to demolish and rebuild and take it from there?
Very good. Thank you, Caitlin. My name is John Sarkis. I'm a real estate developer. I live in Newburyport now. I have lived in Newburyport for a number of years. Was in West Newbury prior to that, where I was very active on the planning board in that town for 10 years. I've developed in the area. I own small portfolio, very small portfolio of buildings in town now where we have mostly apartments. I built and developed south of Boston, north of Boston, west of Boston, up into Maine. Most of what I do is multi-unit development. And in recent years, we've branched out into renovations. I have with me tonight my partner, Scott Sheehan, who is sitting in the back. Scott and I have handled a number of projects together. He specializes in restoration and renovation. We've chosen to do this project together. Sometimes we don't, sometimes we do, but he's a very good guy to work with. I'm usually on the planning design end up front, and he's on the constructed later end. Also with me tonight is Ernie DeMeo, Ernie the architect. He is the architect for this project. I've worked with Ernie since I was in my 30s on a number of commercial.
only 10 years now.
Oh, yeah, on and off. I see other architects in the room that I've worked with, you know, so, yeah. So we have a history of doing this sort of thing. Okay. I live just down the street from this myself on Federal Street. The gentleman who lives here now bought the property. Can we go to the next slide? Or why don't we go back? I'm sorry. And I will stand away and use this. Okay, well, I assume we're familiar. This is High Street. This is the famous sailboat that people see in the yard, right there. It's the next house down. So bluish, Greek revival, close to the street, in need of repair. If you can zoom in now and then go to the next slide. So as you can see, there is a side yard. The lot is larger than most lots on Federal Street. There's room for expansion toward High Street, let's say. The lot has an interesting dog leg in the back, where once a barn was there was once a barn in that location. There are anecdotes flying around that at one point, the gentleman who owned the house and the barn was beat badly at bowling at the club. Thank you, at the Dalton Club, and the other members were really harassing him. So he supposedly built a little little bowling alley up over his barn and practiced and practiced and practiced. And then went back to the Dalton Club and took everybody's money. I don't know how true that is. Over what was a carriage house. Anyway, that structure collapsed long ago. We could go to the next slide. So the structure is a two-story Greek revival. I could not find a Form B for the property. It was constructed according to the district data sheets, 1845, currently owned by Jeff Woodburn since 1994. It was deeded to him by a Jacob Checkaway of Checkaway Oil that was in town for a number of years. And not only the oil, but also the salvage business. It is a two-family structure right now. The card will represent that. You can see on the Sanborn maps and the assessor's maps that there have been various iterations of additions to primarily in the rear of the structure. It was inconclusive to me as to what they were and what parts were original and what's not. The only thing we can tell is that there's if you want to go back a slide, it appears to me that this box may have been constructed first. This may have been constructed second. And that section we know is more than 75 years old. Everything in the back of that, from here out, there's various iterations of that on the various Sanborn maps. The 1924 map, the assessor's map, looks like this, but isn't exactly like this either. So that's why we believe whatever was in this section was probably taken down in the 70s and was rebuilt as we see it now. In addition to a small addition, one-story addition right in that location. And that, I think, happened as part of converting the property from a single to the two-family that it is today. That's what it all appears to be, just looking at the way egress went and what the uses of those spaces are for right now. Thank you, Caitlin. Like I say, we have evidence that it was converted to as two-family sometime in the 70s. And I just described the condition of those bump outs. I described earlier the carriage that was located in the back. We've done not an exhaustive, but a good preliminary look at the structure. Foundations are in very good shape for the two main boxes of the house. The structural components appear to be very good. There was a fire at one point in the attic. It did not damage the structure greatly and was rebuilt. Most of the house, structure of the house is in good shape and usable. There'll need to be fortifications here and there, but nothing really wrong with it. The exterior of the house, however, the roofing, the siding, all the eave trim, the doors, the windows, all the trim all the way around has been neglected for a number of years and was, since Jeff has owned the property, and was neglected for a number of years even prior to that. Much of that needs to be removed. We believe the siding that is on almost all of the house is asbestos shakes that are obviously not original to the house. The windows are obviously not original as well. In one of the pictures you might be able to tell, they left an original window up in the gable in the attic, and the rest of them are you can see are replaced, and there are, I think, even some storms on some of them. Okay, these are the Sanborn maps. If they're critical at this time, I'll go through them. If not, we can.
You can probably breeze most along to to get to where specifically what you're going to do in terms of what you're gonna remove, what you're gonna replace, what you're gonna build.
So, you've got all four elevations of the house shown in this picture. Our general plan is to add on to the house, is to demolish this later added addition.
Mhm.
And the one you can't see in the picture would be this. These are the two that we believe are from the seventies.
Okay.
Okay,
And I just never include that little deck there.
correct. The little deck would go as well.
Right.
Okay, so we can go to the next slide. And you can go click through them one by one if you want, just for context. You can see disrepair, you can see that a eave was altered in spots like that. It's difficult to tell in this photo. This window you can see is probably original, but it's much older than the other ones in the photos. As you can also see, the brick, the masonry steps are they're very dangerous at this time.
Yeah.
Round columns.
Is it, what color is the lighter shade there? I thought it was kind of bluish.
It is kind of
Okay.
bluish, yeah. Miles Davis kind of blue.
Okay.
The door is a great door. Our plan is to refurbish the door.
You mentioned removing trim, but you didn't say remove and replace, just remove, so.
So we
I'd
would-
like to know what your
Our,
plan
our
is.
intent is to restore this to exact dimension.
Mhm.
Most of the trim on this house is simply flat. There are almost no profiles to anything, except for some crown up at the drip line, really, right?
Yeah, there are pilasters at the corners of the main structure that have.
Right.
Sort of a cornice type of
Right,
capital
right,
that has profile.
right.
So much of it is easily replicable today. So we think the best thing to do would be I mean, it's rotting all over the place. It's, it's got lead paint all over it. It's just nothing that I really want to, restore in place. I think it's better off removed. And whereas it's flat, it's easy to make it look just like it looked before. And we will dimension everything prior to construction,
Like the width of the corner boards, that sort of thing.
everything,
Yeah.
correct? You can go on to the next one. Well, before, this does show that there is a driveway,
Right,
an existing driveway to the right of the house. I'm not gonna go with east, west, and north. I'll stick to,
yeah, that's fine.
for most people.
And this one shows what you were just talking about, that little thing that's kind of like a molding that's simulating a
Correct.
cap at the top of the.
Right, I think in this instance, that bump out is actually the smaller box that was added after the
Mhm.
original box,
Right,
but
Yeah,
older than 75 years.
Right.
But in that instance, they tried to pick
Right.
up on the detailing of the
Yeah.
original and apply it there.
and there's a flat roof in there too. You can see it now
Yeah.
here.
yeah,
Again, you can see, we were able to look under here and that's how we were determined, very clearly that that addition is less than 75 years old.
So it appears that that's a mudroom, that bump out there that's adjacent to the deck. The mudroom and the deck have the same structural floor. And there are no posts or columns underneath the mudroom.
Hmm.
They actually continue out and go under the deck, and then there are posts at the deck. I think the next slide may show it better. Or maybe it's the previous one.
The footing has a 5-gallon bucket on it.
yeah.
So that was kind of a dead giveaway.
That's fine.
I assume there's probably, so would I assume correctly that the cellar ends where those,
Before the mudroom.
Yeah,
there's
Nothing under the mudroom.
right. But there's cellar under the one right before that,
Correct.
okay,
it ends with this wall.
right, got it,
Yeah,
And in this photo, you can see
the spiral.
Oh, yeah.
Fire
the
escape.
later bump out with the brick
right,
at the foundation is,
Right.
we believe, from the 70s.
okay,
The rest of the taller boxes have the granite
Okay,
foundation at the base. So-
And in this photo, it's interesting, just that we surmise that this was not original. You can see how close it is to that window right
Uh-huh.
there. And there are a handful of other things inside and outside that lead you can see obvious compromises that they had to make, in other words. Okay?
expected kind of a mix there of some clapboards and some other shingles.
I think in the
just
'70s
a-
edition, the small edition, they used wood
Yeah,
shingles
oh,
as patchwork.
Really?
And in the larger building, they are asbestos shingles and some of them are broken. In some of the photos, you can actually see that they've broken in places. Those are not clapboards. They've been painted over so many times that they appear continuous. but they're-
really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yep, and we haven't pulled any shingles off to see what's going on yet, because it's occupied right now. But, I don't know if they took shingles off and put the shakes,
Right,
or if they went right over what was there yet, it's
yeah,
not clear
No.
at this time.
we'll find out eventually.
We will.
This,
I also, you can see an original window there too.
I think one of the things about this photo that I wanted to point out before we move on is that small chimney that's
Mhm.
about a foot above the ridge line there in the back is one of the items that we're proposing to demolish.
Mhm.
That chimney does not, there are no fireplaces or heating elements in the building that use that chimney currently. And as you can see, it doesn't even express itself on the exterior other than popping through the roof there. It cannot function as a chimney as it is now. Even if we wanted to use it as a chimney, we'd have to, extend it and repair it and so forth. And, it's actually the masonry that makes it up as it goes through the building actually causes us some problems on the interior as far as,
It sort of zigzags.
All right, so I assume that's all gonna go.
yes, that's.
I would like to get rid of that. That to me doesn't look
And
safe.
the old one there, you plan to restore that?
Yes.
And
This one, the shorter one, was also supposedly hit by lightning at one point and was taller. As you can see, like probably like the other one or something similar. And there's a rumor that it got hit by lightning, fell off. And the tenant that was in there refused to pay rent after that and. And that thus began Mr. Checkaway saying, I don't want to have any more of this.
Okay.
Building.
Moving right along.
Moving right along, yeah. I mean, you can see the difference there.
Yeah.
So I assume you're all familiar with the neighborhood.
Very much.
This is a view from nearby the house, the first one on the left, looking downhill towards Water Street. The second one is actually this end of Water Street. On Federal Street, it's going down, you can go on to the next.
Yeah, that red house is the only one.
Yeah. And this is looking at the subject in the adjacent two-family structure.
Yeah.
And then the same sort of view looking further down
Yeah.
the road. And here's a shot from the corner of High and Federal, looking down at the current streetscape. Looking to the rear of the property, this is standing on that deck, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
We have abutting us, several two-family homes right now that have been expanded from time. You're basically looking at the neighbors here. If you go back one, I'm sorry. This little spot here is that little dog leg job.
Okay.
This is looking up towards, on the left, this is looking up towards High Street. The famous sailboats there.
Historic.
Sailboats historic.
Joe.
It stays there.
So here's our request. We, as, I fully expect that, the board would find that the house is historic. But we would request that the additions, the two little additions, the bathroom addition and the rear bump out mudroom addition are not historic.
Mhm.
Yeah, either way, we'd probably want to remove those.
Mhm.
And then, based on the plans you're about to see, we request that the demo delay be released.
Okay, so we'll get into those plans next, but before we do that, so, we're sort of intermingling these two, since it is one property, really, the shed. We took up that initial motion on that. So what I would propose is we have a motion as to the house. We can't like do part of a house as historic or not,
Okay.
but in reality, it's kind of like that, in that we'll say, we would have a motion that the house is considered for preservation. But given the circumstances, if your plans call for, demolishing a non-historic part, obviously that's, taken into consideration, even though the old part is
Okay.
historical. Does anyone have, before we do that motion, anyone have any clarification or questions for Mr.
So this is
Circus?
a two-family today. And
Correct,
it's gonna stay as a two-family.
correct.
But
Is
then-
the, porch staying pretty much static?
We have no intention to, alter the dimension of anything. We like to, we're gonna check the stability of those columns. If we can reuse them, we will.
So do you know if the design of the front porch is original to the,
It's a great question. It looks like it might have been original. And we'd like to keep it either way, yeah.
As my old partner used to say, I wasn't there that day.
I think the columns have been replaced.
At some point.
they just look like a front?
Yeah,
All right, so a motion that the house, the main structure is considered for preservation would be in order. Someone can make such a motion.
Make that motion.
Okay, so Mr. If has made that motion. Hang on a second. 60, this is 90 Federal Street. No, did I confuse this one with 60? I did. 60 is the one with two separate applications, okay. So I erred apparently, but, because I was thinking, this is 90 Federal, this isn't two separate applications for the shed and the house, this is just the one, okay. Okay, well, that's okay, so is there a motion that the main structure is, could be,
You did that, you just need a second.
okay,
Yeah, a second.
okay. So that's Biff, I think you made the motion, right?
Biff made the motion, yeah.
And was that,
Ed.
Ed, okay. Okay. E-N, okay, Andrew,
Yes.
Biff,
Yes.
okay, Scott?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Fay, you with us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ellen Markey,
Yes.
thank you. Ed
Yes.
and Chris?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about the confusion I seem to be suffering before. So, oh, I see what I did. Okay, so, now we'll get into your demo plan.
Correct.
And how about you're gonna construct, there'll be a public comment period, and then we'll vote on whether it's properly preserved. Okay,
perfect. Thank you, Caitlin. Here is a site plan. Showing the boundaries of the property, the location of the existing structure, and what we propose to do. So this is the driveway that exists to the right of the structure. We're looking at it from Federal Street. The existing structure is shown in hash here, plus the area right here that we propose to demolish. The little bathroom addition that we propose to demolish is right in here somewhere. The setback lines are shown in pink here. So this becomes our building envelope. Our proposal is to add on a wing, if you will, to the left side of the house into the yard. And if you want to go to the next slide. Oh, we also propose to remove the shed, by the way.
That's good. Are the two curb cuts existing, or are you trying to seek a second?
No, we will be seeking the second one. Okay, with this, I would like to turn it over to Ernie, the architect. This is his department, not mine,
Okay,
and, take it from there, thank you.
Good evening, Ernest DeMeo, Tectonics Architects. With the demolition, as John mentioned, this is the portion of the building that has a bathroom addition that we believe dates to the 1970s. We would remove that. This is the mudroom pump out in the back and the deck that is integral with the mudroom. We would remove that. Apart from that, obviously, John mentioned that we would remove all the windows, we would replace siding, but the intention is to maintain as many of the profiles and trim as we can. Obviously, we'll replicate where we need to. And so the character of the existing is upgraded, maintained and upgraded. Next slide. This is the rear view of the building. You can see this is the mudroom portion right here that would be removed. There's actually a sort of a little head house here, which I suspect may have actually been a bulkhead at one time. And when the mudroom was added, it was made taller. We're actually gonna keep the walls of this, or replace as we need to, but we're gonna keep that doorway serving the basement, but remove the deck and remove the mudroom. And then this elegant second means of egress spiral stair would come out with the bathroom addition on the side of the house. Some windows will be removed, some new window openings will be created. But for the most part, as you can see, the side elevation on the driveway side, we're leaving it mostly intact, one window.
a question, since you mentioned windows and traditional windows, do you know now what you plan to replace them with? What type of windows you plan to put in? Cause we talked a lot about preservation and all that.
Right. No, we don't, and honestly, we're gonna try to do some more research to see what the original mutton pattern might have been on this house. I mean, we did find one photo, and I've got to study it a little better. But I don't know if the windows were replaced prior to that,
Right.
so.
What's the pattern of the windows that are in that, the very top?
Yeah, that attic window that looked old, was that like a
I think it was
2/2 or?
side by side, I think, right? I think it was one down the middle.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, like 2/2 type of thing?
It was a smaller window though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
smaller, yeah.
Well, that, you're talking about the one in the back, there's one on the front, I thought that had the original.
This one here. Yeah, the one in the front is larger.
We could, that one is part of it for sure, you know, that will help.
Yeah,
But it is a smaller window nonetheless, you know.
yeah, it's kind of a transition period.
Yeah.
There were some houses that still had 6/6, some were going to larger lights with like 2/2 or.
Right.
Yeah, there's 6/6.
Oh, you can see it there. Oh,
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, he's blowing it up. You can see it's a 6/6.
Can you tell in that picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, the front ones are
6/6.
6/6, they're
Yeah.
like, they're wood. Been painted multiple times.
Sorry for the interruption.
So they're probably gonna be something like, you know,
Okay.
12/12. I don't really know. I mean, we'll get a good look at it.
Okay. And these are just the demolition calculations for the facade. We end up at 17.5% total facade demolition, less than the 25%. So we comply. Next, elevation. So this is the front elevation showing our addition. The existing portion of the building is here refurbished. This bay is part of the original building, and then there's a sort of a connector piece, and then our addition in front, which picks up on eave lines and roof slopes and window patterns, and even some of the projecting elements. So this facade in 2 dimensions, we have some 3-dimensional images that you'll see later, but in 3 dimensions, this facade is actually set significantly back.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about how many feet, you know?
About 18 feet or so.
Okay,
It's actually in the same plane as the front face of this bay. So when we get to the 3D views, you'll see
Okay.
that it doesn't come any closer to the street than
right,
the bay that's immediately adjacent to it. And this back wall here, which, you know, appears to be a
Right.
tall wall up forward, is actually set just very far back, almost kissing the back corner of
Right.
the original box,
right,
which leaves that side of the building, the original facade, almost entirely to the
Right.
So, next slide, please. So, this elevation represents this piece here being the new building in the foreground of the existing building that is beyond. And just because we're looking at a flat head-on view, you see a portion of the original facade in the
Right.
background. You can actually see almost entirely that facade when you see the three-dimensional views. So, and a lot of the roof line, you can see how the roof line shapes of the original are being picked up in the addition. This is the rear view, so everything from this line here over the original, this is the smaller box in the back with the mudroom removed, the head house retained, a new rear entry into this unit. Then there's a connector piece here that is also set back from this plane.
Mhm.
And then this piece is the new addition that doglegs off to the side. Next slide, please. And this is the driveway elevation, which is largely unchanged except for a window that we're adding in the back here. And this is the addition sort of peeking out from behind the original building. The peak of the new addition is slightly lower than the peak of the original. The slopes are maintained, but because the width of the building is slightly smaller, then the ridge line is slightly lower. We did go to great effort, though, to try to match cornice lines and eave lines so that it appears to be all a unified whole. Next slide, please. Okay, so this view, this three-dimensional view shows a little bit better how the connecting facade is
Right.
set back, and the four windows that exist right now would all, the view to them would be maintained. The bay that exists would also be maintained. This facade runs by and behind the bay and doesn't even touch the bay. And this, this portion of the addition has a frontal reading to the street similar to the original house with a notch in between, let's say. This entrance would be for the unit that would occupy this building, this portion of the building, and this entrance is for the addition portion of the building. Next slide, please. So this is the rear of the building. This is sort of the driveway along the side. This is the existing head house, which has a new roof placed over it to replace. The roof is integral to the mudroom and we have to remove it and then replace it with something. This is the deck that we've added in the back, which projects no further than the mudroom that's there now. We remove the deck from behind. This mass right here is the original, or say the large portion of the building that we're retaining. And then this portion here is the addition beyond, and there's a notch in between the two that you don't see in this view. Next slide, please. So this is more of an aerial shot to give you an idea of the setback of the new addition from the street. I think someone experiencing the view, walking down the street, the original building would be more prominent. Obviously, I think it will retain its significant presence on the street. This facade, the original facade, will be largely maintained open to view. This is the chimney that we're saving. This area right here is where we are proposing a connection between the new roof and the existing roof. So there's about it's less than 5 square feet in plan of overlay of one roof to the other.
Mhm.
In this, so very minimal. And as I mentioned before, E lines extended and picking up on the original. So that's an overview of the approach that we like to use.
Okay. But any clarifications before we have a public comment period? Any questions on
I'm kind of curious about the building materials. It sounds like it's a little vague, that you're not sure yet on the siding and.
Proposed materials, certainly. Our suspicion is that the original structure had clapboards on it and not shakes. So we propose to go with, cementitious clapboards for the bulk of the structure, if not all of it. Your usual composite flat stock for the window casings and door casings and corner boards and trims. Again, on the windows, we're not sure yet what we'd like to do, but for sure, we would do an SDL, simulated divided light window. What manufacturer and all that, we haven't quite gotten there. If it becomes critical, we'll spend that time and nail that down. The roof, the existing roof is slate. And it is not in good shape. There are numerous leaks and our current plan is to remove it and go to an asphalt. We're not opposed to, I just don't think we're gonna find them all, and I'm gonna, renovate a house and have a situation where we've got a problem. So, maintaining a slate roof. I can't guarantee that makes any logic or sense right now. So that's why we asked for the right to remove it and go with an asphalt fiberglass typical shingle.
Okay, we'll have more time for some of those kinds of questions after the public comment period. Is there anyone online, Caitlin, is curious? All right, well, this maybe
Just a quick, could you go back one slide? I'm just curious, the little kind of bay window or the bump out window on the left of the original structure. You're saying that does not touch the new,
Correct.
how much distance is there between the kind of the back of that bay window?
A few feet.
And is there a window there on the back side?
There's a window like this
Yeah.
on the other side of the bay. Yes, there is. There are no windows on the new facade behind that.
One of our original designs had that wall, that space a little too tight, and I said earlier, I gotta get a nail gun in there.
Yes. The roof overhangs about 18 inches or so on the bay, and the wall is beyond that.
Thank you. All right, so let's open up a public comment period in case there is anyone who'd like to make public comment either on Zoom or here in the room. I'm not sure there will be any, but we'll give an opportunity for anyone. If you wish to make a comment, if you're here in the room, just raise your hand, or if you're on the Zoom, use the Zoom controls to raise your hand. I believe it's *9 to raise your lower the hand from the phone, or the Zoom controls to raise your hand, and so on. We'll allow a few seconds, and we'll see if anyone has a comment. Anyone in the room here? Not seeing anyone in the room. Looks like people on Zoom are not too, okay, so we'll close that public comment period. I'll make a note that there weren't any public comments. So now we can, open up to any more comments from my fellow commissioners or anything. I had one. How would you respond to someone who said, gee, the Secretary standards are that that it should be subordinate, and I think you've done a good job with that, but that it's too imitative of the original in that it's almost like you're trying to make it look as if it were 19th century as well. What would you say to that?
Well, I think one thing that's not represented.
Because I've been through this before, where members said we prefer it to look similar. to the existing.
Well, it's supposed to
And,
be.
and we argued, it's not supposed to. We wanted to as well, but the
Yeah.
Secretary of Standards say the opposite.
Well, what they say is that it should be compatible, it should fit in, should use compatible materials, it shouldn't look, strange and ungodly, whatever. But that it also shouldn't be, it shouldn't try to be disguising itself as a historical building.
Well, one of the things that I have two comments.
Yeah.
One is that the distance between the more forward piece on the left
Mhm.
and the existing has a notch there, and the notch is actually set back 18 feet
Yeah.
or so. And I think if you were to go back and look at the aerial plan, you would see that the rhythm of those masses is more similar to what's happening on the opposite side of the street, which has, in some cases, you have houses, separate houses that are fairly close together. So I think having that rhythm of a gable piece fronting the street and then another gable piece fronting the street with a notch between is not dissimilar and out of context. Another point is that we're not showing color right now in this presentation, so I think it is possible that you can use similar materials for both pieces, but not necessarily replicate color exactly. So you could distinguish one from the other with a little bit of difference in color and tone
Mhm.
that would allow them to stand a little bit apart without.
Yeah. Sounds like you two talked about this somewhat. So because you did explore, for example, maybe not having quite so much of those molding details at the top of the side, the corner posts and that sort of thing, was any of that discussed?
Yes.
Kind of having it be recognizable as a Greek revival, but maybe not quite so.
We've looked at many iterations and it's gone
I see.
many places. And we're open to it going
I see, all right,
more places.
I appreciate
I've been before this commission and ZBA before for similar types of projects. With significantly different approaches and received a variety of comments.
okay,
So,
okay.
The short answer is, we had this debate, and we
Yeah, it
joked
sounds
about
like
it a lot, as
sounds
one
like you did.
guess.
All right, well, let
And
me
we just arrived at this as perhaps the best looking
okay.
scenario.
We need to move along. What, any other, deliberative comments from my
Yeah.
fellow?
Sure, I mean, I think I was, the first thing I was thinking too is that it's too iterative of the original property. I think that like the details in it, and it is kind of one of those balancing acts that when you look through what the Secretary of Interior is looking for, it's, not a copy, but it should look like it should be there, but also look like it's obviously not from the same age. I think painting them different colors, there's enough houses in town that are literally painted down the middle, different colors of the same age, so I don't know that mentally that does it. I think the setback and the massing, considering how large it is, that was my first instinct, was like, oh my God, this is huge.
Yeah.
But I think the setback and the fact that you've got it actually a little bit shorter and it's an interesting thing what you've done around that bay window. I don't know that I'd want to be cozy up in that window myself. I'm like, no, you could reach for
Face Federal Street, that's all.
reach for a sugar for your coffee out the window with your neighbor. But that's a bunch of homes in town are like that. So I don't think it bother anything. I think really it's just, it gets down to probably the details of how, what the replacements are gonna be. And make some sort of differentiation that is respectful, but different. And
Okay,
I know that's a hard thing to grapple with, but it's what we're charged to.
And to pick up something Biff just said, that I would agree, if you were saying that the size, the setback, the whole large scale orientation, that really says that, oh, that was a later addition. I would agree that, I don't think you need to paint in different colors. I think anyone who knows anything about this town or architecture in general they'll know that was later addition. They might think it was too imitative, or they might not. But to me, a more, and I think Biff was alluding to this too, a more important thing is, that you've shown it here, you've got 2/2 windows, which I think, which is, you know, an appropriate pattern for that era of house. That style was coming in around that time, is my understanding, so, yeah, so that would be fine, would be good to. And I know that one of the things that, you know, we're always concerned about with a historic structure, sounds like you have in mind to do the right thing, quote unquote, in terms of, you know, respecting its age and its architecture and so forth. It'd be great to sort of try to pin down a little bit, okay, you know, so what are the windows gonna look like this? If so, you know, great, you know, or not, you know, so that's just a little bit big. Anyone else, a comment or? No, okay. Shall we have a motion as to, whether the structure is historically significant and considered, and preferably preserved?
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Biff, let me just make a little note here. And probably preserves those, Biff, is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay, that was,
Yeah.
and Ed, okay, thank you, Ed. So a yes means, that it's preferably preserved, that would impose the, demo delay, and then we can discuss whether we want to lift that, after this vote. So let's go around the horn per usual, historically significant and preferably preserved, so, so Andrew, you're.
Yes.
that? Okay. Let's see, Biff,
Yes.
okay, Scott,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Fay,
Yes.
thank you. Alan,
Yes.
by the way, can you guys on Zoom, can you hear us, everything that's going on, okay?
Oh, yeah,
Okay, good,
perfectly well.
good, Mr. Ed,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Sotell,
Yes.
okay, so, all right, so for now, there's a demo delay, so what do you guys think about, the plans? Do you, are people feel that we can take a motion as is, or do you feel a need for more? I don't wanna put words in anyone's mouth, but,
I
How
would
do you-
like to see, exactly what they would like to do,
in terms of things like windows and so forth.
windows and materials and redesign.
If that were the case, well, let me ask you guys, as the applicant, and it often happens that, we close the demo delay, but, sometimes as soon as the next meeting, the applicant returns with some modifications and they get approved and we lift the delay. Do you think, you would like to come back, and and what we'll do is we'll tell you what we're looking for, so you know what to come back with, to be fair to you guys. Does that sound
Yeah,
reasonable?
when we hear it, sure.
So I think one of the things is a concern is windows. You talked about, you already told us what kind of siding you plan to use. And the corner boards and so twin boards, and so forth. You stated that, you stated the roof. Yeah, is there anything else that we really need to know? What?
Materials, I think you said.
The chimney, that's gonna be preserved.
Mhm.
It's gonna be preserved in the same style as it is now. Yes, the details,
Yeah,
because it's really pretty,
it is nice.
yes. So I'm glad to hear that.
I have a great basin,
Yeah, good. I need more.
very good.
I mean, that really is.
Yeah. Couple of them now, believe it or not, they're hard to find.
Yeah, that's why I say, let me know who it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm curious about in the eave, on the very far right, there's still that notch there.
Yeah.
What's the story
Keep the
with
pigeons
that?
out or something.
Yeah, you see what he's talking
We'll
about?
correct that.
Okay, well, 'cause
Are you talking about that?
Yes.
Boo-boo and,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll,
Okay, so that's not supposed to be on this.
you're right.
Drawing, okay.
That's actually right.
Got it, okay.
I'm not understanding.
You see, we,
This, little,
Covering over the.
MacGyver fix.
Yeah, that's what's there. 75 years old.
I think we can hang that.
even if it were 75, we'd probably okay that thing.
Fair enough.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. what would you like to say or ask?
So I would agree that I need to see more, and I just I feel like for consistency's sake over the years, the roof. So I heard an explanation about the roof and why the roof needs to go from slate to asphalt, but I'm going to be honest with you, it wasn't a great explanation. It was sort of so for me, the addition is really big. It looks like mathematically you're adding nearly 50%, unless my math is off, to the existing structure, right? So we're creating two different homes, which is probably better than cramming two families into the one home. So I guess to get my vote, whenever we take that vote, I'd like to see if we could maybe think about the roof as sort of I guess call it a trade-off. I think we're pretty consistent over the years with materials. Make sure the clapboards are being replaced with clapboards, or make sure that plastic clapboards are replaced with wood clapboards. I'm glad that we're getting rid of the asbestos, but then we're also talking about replacing I would guess a pretty old slate roof with a modern roof without exploring maybe so my guess is it's a financial thing, and that's understandable. But we're also getting a pretty big, you can call it an addition, I would call it an extra house. So I would like to see more on that, in addition to the window stuff.
And there was a better, like maybe something that shows that what the actual estimate would be to keep slate versus converting it.
That might be a good faith gesture, perhaps.
So here we run into the problem of, what our charge is versus what reality is, right? Why are you shaking your head? We'll get to you. So, in theory, preservation, right? It's got to say roof, now it doesn't have a preservation restriction on it, right? So it's not as strict as that. On the other hand, there's the reality, and
I'd just like to speak to that briefly.
sure,
We don't have the answer yet.
okay.
There are leaks all over the place. Again, my fear is it's actually probably gonna cost us more to strip it and put a new roof on it. My fear there is that trying to restore the roof or repair the roof will miss a couple of leaks, and you won't know about it till a year or two later.
Right.
And we've got a refurbished home inside, and I've got a serious problem at that point. So from a builder's point of view, and somebody who has to warranty the house.
Yeah.
This is the reality of the world. There's nothing I can do about this. So, if there was a way of cataloging all the leaks that are there.
Well, I don't think that's quite what we're looking for. I don't even know what you wanted to say.
No, I haven't been through slate roof myself, I'm respectful of that.
And
Another
yeah.
consideration, pardon me, another consideration is that we have an entire other roof
right,
that we're building. Now, we
Right.
can
Oh, right.
choose a asphalt shingle roof that has a shadow line to it or has a slate look to it. But getting material that matches the original material, even if we could guarantee the original material might be leak-proof, getting something that feels compatible with that in the new portion of the building will be very.
It's that nice smooth old slate. I know it is hard to find that now. What?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The only other thing I would like to add is two things. I'm looking at this on Google Maps. I get you saying the front step is in pretty rough shape, and it looks like are there historic or photos of what the front porch maybe originally looked like? Because I find the thing funky, like there's just there's just the brick steps going down, but there's the front porch that extends over to the bay window. And so I would ask that you reconsider maybe how that all goes back together. And the other thing is going back to nothing about the dark trim there says Greek revival to me. And I don't know if there's, when you, since we're asking you to look at specifying windows, et cetera, you know, can you say, okay, is that a Greek revival bay window? And even on the new edition, it looks like you're trying to echo that. And I just don't know if that's, you know, something doesn't read right to me.
The only, I found a photo from the 1800s.
Yeah.
Or early 1900s that has it there. And I was, like you, expecting not to see it. And that's the only photo that I found thus far. I'm happy to make, take a little more time and dig in. And similarly, I'm happy to spend some time to dig in the roof too. We'd love to keep it, we'd love to repair it and have it there. And another thought, I'm speaking out loud, or thinking out loud, a way of differentiating the structures might be to put a metal roof on the addition. Which would, expensive, but it, rather than alter the trim and alter the styling of the building itself, maybe another way to handle that is with a completely different roof. Just a thought out loud, I get it.
We haven't done any demolition exploration yet with regard to the front porch, but I suspect that the bay was not originally attached to the roof that's over the doorway. And at some later point in time, that was done to sort of consolidate the roof into one roof plumbing.
Also, right now, the other quick comment, as long as we're talking about the bay, just real quickly. Typically, bays weren't unusual in that era, but having a one big window would be. So that probably was more, you know, a couple of narrow windows, as you probably know, right? So.
Oh, that would be nice.
I would almost think, when I look at them, I feel like that's like an Italianate sort of application that they probably put over Italianate style, applied over the Greek revival, like, you know, 20, 30 years later.
The bay.
Yeah, I mean, that time wise, that would.
All right, good, but, well, we weren't there that day, right? Do you feel you have enough information?
Sure.
To come back and
Yeah. Does
sweep
anything
us
else?
off our feet, so to speak? I can't think of anything else. And all I'll say in parting is that, my house had a slate roof on the front, east facing slope and asphalt shingle in the back. Both were, especially that asphalt side was bad. What he did was he removed the existing slate, laid down new plywood deck for the whole thing, nice more shield and all that stuff, and put that slate back on with a, and it wasn't that costly actually, and it, you know, worked out pretty well. For the back, there's also slate, but it didn't really match, but it didn't matter because you couldn't see both at the same time anyway.
I suspect, and this is just speculation right now, but the original roof was not built to today's standard,
Right.
let's say.
In terms of structurally.
So if we remove the slate roof and do any work there,
Yeah.
we're probably gonna have to reinforce the structure
Mm,
because based on current snow
Right.
loads and wind loads and that sort of thing,
yeah,
you know, the bigger structural members are spaced more widely
Right.
apart,
right,
and there are probably some issues there with doing that. So this is not really a cosmetic
right.
fix.
So would the asphalt or get around that problem? Because it's lighter.
Yeah.
Well, I've done slate roofs on homes before, and you have to beef up the structure
Okay,
significantly.
all right, so there's a structural difference.
So, what was done back then and allowed to be done
Right,
is different than now.
yes.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you both.
Thank you.
John, and what's your name?
Ernest DeMayo?
Okay, Ernest Mayor, thank you.
Do I need to request a continuance?
Let's see,
Next date is February 13th.
well, not really, because, you know, we've concluded that, everybody's in place, so in a sense, that, you know, that's a done deal. However, yeah, just get on whatever agenda you'd feel ready for, you can come back in to, you know, to basically apply the listed dam delay based on some modifications to the plan. I think that's correct, right? Caitlin?
Sound all right with you?
Yeah.
Caitlin, is that what I said, correct? Okay. All right,
Very good, thank you very much.
thank you, thank you. Okay,
Good evening.
All right, so let me make a note here,
Yes, thank-
next. Next, we have the one that I was thinking of before.
Good evening,
Yes, and your name again?
I'm Heather Ranny.
Heather Running, okay, so this is at another demo delay hearing for 90, excuse me, thank you, 60 High Street. And there are two applications that we're kind of conjoin them a little bit. You've got the shed, total demo, and the main structure, which is obviously not a total demo. So this is the one I was thinking, my plan of attack would be, you can tell us, we'll talk about the shed. Whether or not we would consider for preservation or not. They're both historical or historically significant by statutory definition. But we can, depending on how, if we decide the shed is not considered for preservation, then that's a done deal. Then, if it is considered for preservation, then it'll just be lumped together with the main structure, because I think you've got them all in one presentation anyway. That sound fair enough?
It does, sure.
Okay, so as far as is there anything we should know about just the shed now, from either condition or whatever that would make us think shouldn't be considered for preservation?
I guess just a couple of things here. We couldn't nail down the date.
Uh-huh.
The latest Sanborn map I could find from 1914, it wasn't there, but you know, when you get into the 7,500 years, it could obviously have been there. But it is an existing shed. It is currently non-conforming, close to the property line. And really the reason why we want to remove it is because it doesn't work as a garage and for the needs that we have for it. It's not dilapidated and falling down, but it's also
Right.
not in great shape either. The neighborhood skunks love it. It's a constant battle to keep them out.
What was it, what the first Sanborn map that it shows up on was?
It does, well, from 1914, it's not on there. I couldn't find any past that to find one on. I'll have to go back to the archives. It's not original. The other structure in the presentation was original based on the Sanborn maps, going back to 1900 and the late 1800s, but that one, correct, or no, that's the shed. The shed was not on there.
Okay, so, yeah, so the main structure has a Form B. And they estimated about 1845,
Correct.
but there's no evidence that the shed was anywhere near that old, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
sometime in the 1900s.
okay. Well, so there it is, folks, the shed. We are called upon to make a decision as to whether it should be considered for preservation. I know there are, myself and I know Mr. Fay might have a comment about preserving accessory buildings such as this. Anyone have a comment about whether this little shed needs to be considered for preservation, or if it can be sacrificed, so to speak, and allowed to be demolished? Anyone want to comment? That includes you guys on Zoom if you have a comment. No opinion?
Yeah, I would say that I don't see the significance in the structure itself, frankly, to preserve or to save. I don't know what the gain would be, and I don't know if there's any real significance in that one small structure. So I would
Yes.
say it could go.
Yeah, it's not, it's not like a noble carriage house with a cupola and all that, eh?
No beautiful details. It's
Yeah.
pretty basic.
Would anyone, all right, well, why don't we, the motion would still be, they always are stated in the positive, so the motion is that the structure is historically significant and considered for preservation. So if you don't think it is, then you would just vote no on that. Does anyone care to make that motion?
I make the motion.
Okay, Mr. Bernhardt makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Baus, seconds it. So Andrew,
No,
okay. How about you, Bev?
No.
Okay, Mr. Clark.
You skipped out, I think.
Oh, Okay, we'll come back to, hopefully we'll be back in time. Chris Fay, your vote on that?
Yes, I will vote for the shed. Yes,
Okay. Alan Markey,
No,
same shed.
Ed Neumer,
I don't know.
okay.
I'm curious maybe later about why Chris says yes, that's all.
I'm sure he'll be happy to tell you about it. Mr. Sawtell,
Vote yes.
okay. So. Um. We had to skip over you, Scott. There's a motion that's on the floor. It's, that the shed structure only is historically significant and considered for preservation. So a yes vote means it should be considered for preservation. No vote means it does not need to be considered for preservation. They've been both, it's gone both ways so far.
I didn't know.
Okay. Okay, I was gonna agree with my fellow preservationists, but that's still not enough yes votes to pass. I've got 3 yeses and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noes. So the motion does not pass. So that means, right? Okay, so at this point, we can kind of dismiss the shed part of the conversation, but we're very interested to hear about your plans for the main structure, so what we are interested in, hopefully, it won't take as long as the gentleman before you, but we just wanna know, what is it you're gonna demolish, and what is it you're gonna rebuild, and we'll take it from there.
That sounds great. Maybe, and I apologize, now that I've been through one of these,
Oh, wait a minute,
I can see where it is. How about I?
wait a minute. I'm sorry, we do need to take a vote on the main structure as to whether it's considered for preservation. So before we go to your demo plan review, I jumped over one step. Is there anything you would like to say about the history of 60 High Street, pro or con, whether it's historical significance? We're talking about the main structure now.
Oh, the main structure, if you're talking about the entire structure?
Well, the primary structure. I mean,
Absolutely.
by
yes.
definition, it's historical really because of its age.
It is, and there's
And-
many beautiful details that we
Yeah.
continue to preserve and want to continue with
Yeah.
that in the main structure. We've done quite a bit since we've procured it, making sure that we're maintaining the windows, the shutters. We had a brand new door, made to exact replica of wood of the original door
Mhm.
because that was rotten. Want to make sure that we're preserving those details in the
Okay.
inside of the house. The part that we're talking about, thank you for coming to this, if you don't mind if I hobble over here,
No.
is really this part back here, which is
Right.
the unfinished, I don't know what they call it.
By unfinished means it's
Shed.
not heated and all that,
It
right?
it is just one layer of slats that the windows right through. Yes.
Okay.
Is that portion in the back, but
And do we know
Yes.
about when that was built?
it is on the Sanborn maps.
Or about-
From all the way back in the 18.
Oh, okay, so it's
55,
old.
So
but
it's
unfinished.
been
okay.
there for quite some time.
All right, so it seems like it's pretty much a candidate to be considered for preservation. What seemed to me, is there a motion that the main structure is historically significant and considered for preservation?
A motion to make.
Okay, that was Andrew.
Sure, I'll second.
Here. Catch up to you guys here. Okay, so that's Andrew and Biff again, right? Okay, and let's go to a vote here. Okay, so Andrew,
Yes,
you vote on that, okay. In a second, Biff,
Yes.
okay. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Fay,
Yes,
thank you. Alan Markey,
yes,
thank you. Ed Neumer,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Sartell,
Yes.
okay, so chair makes it unanimous, so it's historically significant and considered for preservation. So now we proceed to the demo delay that we were about to launch into, so my apologies. So, okay, so tell us what it is you plan to demolish, well, you already hinted at it, and what we can probably take it up from here.
Sure, absolutely. And just a quick introduction. So my name is Heather Ranny. I am the homeowner of the property. This is hopefully our forever house. We moved here about 16 years ago. We've had our children here. They're going through the schools. We just love the area and this is really about just taking a portion of the back of the house and modernizing it a bit to meet more of our needs of 2025 versus 1845 when it was initially built. So I don't know if maybe we want to jump a few slides ahead and maybe slide 15 might be a good place to start because you've probably read through a lot of these details, but what we're looking to do, and it looks a little more imposing here than it is, it's actually not, as a great conversation before, not exactly the same depth from the street, but it does mimic what that initial was. So, you know, from here over is the initial part. There is some change here over from the door for a sun porch, and then this is set back, but does mimic the front side to add a garage and then a room up above and a mud room, again, to update and give us some uses for modern day life with
Okay.
busy family and kids.
So just
go ahead.
so we're clear on this particular slide here. Now, those two big revival
Yep.
looking things, they look the same size, but I just, how, do you know how, but the one on the left is set back, you know,
Do
about
we
how
wanna go
far?
maybe down,
Oh,
I think it's
is it-
1 or 2 slides might show
Are they the same size?
the view,
That's
same
separate.
height, maybe go down one more. Why don't we
Here,
try
probably
slide
looking for a
16, or
plan
it's
view.
either slide 16 or slide 21, there we go. So this is the main structure,
Oh, I
it's set
see.
back,
Okay.
it's actually set in on both sides a
Uh-huh.
little bit here, I should have brought a picture with me. It does not come out to the street to the
Okay.
same depth.
So it looks like maybe about, I guess maybe 10 to
I wanna
12
say
feet.
10 to, yeah, that's
Yeah.
about right. So
Okay.
height does match, and one of the reasons that we really wanted to do the height to this level is, again, going with the theme of today's world, we'd love to put some solar panels on and really don't want to do that facing High Street. We want that High Street to look like that beautiful historic home. And if we do have that height there, it will still face south and allow us to put some solar panels on there without really impacting that frontward facing view.
Okay. So, this is the front here, right? So this is the High Street facade?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I understand correctly, they're not changing anything.
Changing
right?
anything there, it's all in the back.
Right.
Yeah, so it is visible from Lime Street,
Right,
but not from High Street, yeah. And then if you look at it from Lime Street, and sorry, if you go down, maybe I think it's around slide 21 where we have the pictures outside of there.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do have, there we go. The section, I tried to highlight it here, sorry.
there's somebody on Zoom, well, me.
Somebody-
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, you were hearing something from the
Okay.
Zoom.
It's really in this area right
Right.
here, so this part of the house, we want to preserve that historic, you know, look and feel. It's this section right here, where, you know, you'll see it kind of behind the trees. And then again, we'll be more conforming, we'll have that space between the yards and be a little bit more in compliance with the code today.
Right, and said, yeah, you can see the garage there, or shed there,
Yeah.
that's being, gonna be demoed. So, just, not that it's a major consideration, is there gonna be room for those trees to stay there, or a tree?
All but one, there is a cherry tree, you can't really see it very well. This one will have to go right here.
Yeah,
But the new driveway cut that will come in, we can continue to preserve this tree. We've got another elm over there, and this tree won't be in at all. So it's one that's set in the yard.
sorry to make you keep hobbling back. and
That's
forth.
okay.
You can stay over here if you like.
Almost out of food.
Okay. Is there anything more to add? If not, we will have a public comment period, but before we do any clarification questions on the part of the panel here, anyone want to ask? Or Zoom commissioners, anyone have a question for Heather? Don't really see any. Okay, so it's maybe a formality, but let's see if there's any public comment period. If anyone has a public comment, raise a hand. Not seeing anyone in the room. Any hand raised there from Mr. There, I guess not. Okay. Does not look like anyone has a public comment. So let me make a note of that. So our deliberation, what do, we have two, or one, but we have to take on whether it's, preferably preserved, right? And then, after that, if we so desire, we can, vote on whether we either, approve these plans as they are, or have some changes like with the previous, person. So, anyone have any comments, thoughts, questions? On,
Can I just see the garage doors again, the picture of the garage?
well, in a way, it's kind of moot, Andrew, because the garage has already been okayed for demolition.
Oh, no, I thought they're building a new garage.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. it
Is that a metal roof as well? Yeah,
Do you say metal? Oh, I'm sorry, where the overhang is?
Yeah. it looks like a seam.
It could, you know what, we haven't decided fully on that, so I'm very open
Like that.
to thoughts.
That's how I read it, so I was
Yeah.
just wondering. That's
Yeah.
what I'm looking.
And the lower windows, the three of them, they're different on the old part. What are they?
Or
Is that steps?
which ones, right here?
Those
Yeah.
darker ones.
Yeah, the darker one.
This is interesting, and I'll find a slide for you to show, but this is meant to be a sunroom, but what we have here is, actually gonna be open to go into the house. In order to preserve the windows on, I guess, the north side of this section of the house, we have to keep this as an open walkway. What slide it might be, do you mind scrolling? Through the. Can we go back up? Not, definitely not in that.
You do?
Maybe. There we go, wait, sorry, we have a top, I'm looking for a top down view to show. Maybe we could look at this one right here and try to explain it a little bit more. So the way that it's intended to be is, that this is an opening that comes in, so it's screened, I would say, or more of like a glass door, coming in. Right now, this is just an open overhang. But again, we have important windows that are of historical significance right here that we didn't want to impact, so it's, kind of a transition place that goes in right there.
I see it, but keep that window there.
Yeah. So what's our dining room window would, not be
So
able to
those,
survive.
those kind of, what look like those darker, so I don't think those are glass or just,
Glass in the winter and screens in the
oh, okay,
summer.
all right, so, okay,
Yeah, meant to be a screen room or a sunroom.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So those would not have a 6/6 kind of style. We want those to be a nice big screen.
You, well, the only comment I'll make is that this very, when I first saw this, it reminded very much of, and this is gonna sound familiar, like the one we just looked at earlier, that it's very imitative.
Yeah,
I was smiling when that came up. I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's extremely similar in the last debate as far as this is, it feels like a little copy of the house being put behind it, and I'm not generally a fan of that. But I do think that this one is different from our last one in that they're not redoing the main part of the structure along with this addition. So I think it's really, does this addition, you know, significantly impact the old home? Is the massing and, you know, placement of it appropriate? I feel like it's hitting most of those marks for me.
Having, the first floor having being a garage helps set it aside.
The garage door is differentiated for sure.
Caitlin, can you go to one of the, like, plan views? I just want to get a better idea of the scale of the addition versus the house again.
All right, put too much in here, didn't I? Might come over and.
One of those plans.
Keep going down. Keep going. Right here. This one would probably help. So this is the current space. This would be the expansion of it, if that helps. This darker shade is what's being
Okay,
added
so-
on, and then the garage back here is removed.
Oh, okay,
The
so,
garage is
okay,
within
so
that
front
space.
is looking down, that's High Street at the bottom, right?
Correct.
All right, and that, okay, so that, oh, okay, so the only thing new is that darkened area?
The new is this darkened area, and then this little box right here is the shed
Right,
that we're getting rid of. So
Right.
this will become open space where it currently has a building, and then there's obviously an increase. We're still within the zoning tolerances
Right.
of lot conformity and percentages, and we're actually bringing it into conformance from setbacks.
so it's pretty amazing like how, in this view, it looks a whole lot smaller than.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
it
when you-
does.
When you take a three-dimensional and you push it down to two.
Are there some more existing condition photos that we can look at, especially of that back area? You have in.
Why don't you go down to one or two? Right? How about that one right there? So like the view from the backyard.
Yeah, yeah.
That's,
if we could
it's,
see that
it's
one.
really just a white box. You've got a door and a window on the front and the back, and then a singular door in the back. Same,
And
size.
so you're, basically, this is being removed completely?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's where some of the room for your addition is coming
Correct.
from.
That is where it is,
Right.
yeah.
It's why it's why they're not adding as much footprint because they're
Right.
using that
Correct.
as part of the addition.
But it will be, pulled in from the main
Right.
structure on both ends, so it will be a reduced size from the main structure.
I must see smoke coming out your ears, you.
No, no, no.
Okay.
I have a question. Correct me if I'm wrong. I only because I've been looking at some of the properties, for the agendas.
Yeah.
Is this the property that has the preservation restrictions on
I don't think so.
it? There was,
I have a quick claim deed on the front side of the house. The details are. in
that's it,
here.
that's
So
it,
if
that's
you
it,
wanna
that's
go
it.
down a little bit, I'll show you what the quick claim deed covers.
Right,
Good memory.
That's it.
So can you keep going?
What's
Sorry,
it
up a
called?
little bit, and I'll show you,
Claim deed versus,
it's written into the deed, I guess, certain things you can't change.
all right.
Yeah.
right here, this one. So this is my bad drawing, but, so we have a quick claim deed, and
Right.
it covers from the front back 28 feet, which is this main portion right here in purple.
Mhm.
The portion that we're looking to impact is back here in orange, and the quick claim deed is very, very clear, 28 feet from the corners.
And what does it say?
Oh, we have to preserve many things inside, which we do, and we
Oh,
actually
so
appreciate,
it's even the inside.
yes.
Yeah,
That
that's what I was reading.
includes our molding, our fireplaces, so we did put some examples of what we've done,
Okay.
if you wanna come here quick.
Oh, I didn't see
Um,
those.
and some of these aren't covered, they don't cover the shutters, we had those
Right.
all redone, but we had a new door made, we
Right.
redone all these interior shutters that were painted shut with
Uh-huh.
lead paint, we had them removed and replaced, and we've actually gone through here and, reinforced all of our ceilings, so we had them taken down from underneath to preserve all the molding, reinforce, and then we did the ceilings so that we aren't damaging the floors or anything inside. So yes, good memory, and we do agree with that, this is just that portion.
So everything's on the quick claim, the new additions can be put in that doesn't, they're not
Don't
gonna,
touch,
don't touch. Love it. Thank you.
Yes.
it's important.
Well, thank you for bringing that. up. Just saw that. Would someone like to make a motion as to whether this main structure should be preferably preserved? Being historically significant.
I can make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bouse. That's so a motion that the structure is historically significant and preferably preserved. Is there a second?
I second,
Okay, that was Ed, right?
yes.
Okay. Okay, Andrew? what do you
Yes.
say? Yes, okay, Biff?
Yes.
Okay, Scott?
Yes.
Chris Fay?
Yes.
Thank you. Alan?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, the system's working well tonight. Ed?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay, so we're unanimous. At this point, we can either hear any additional discussion you guys feel is necessary, or if someone would like to make a motion that, the plans that are acceptable as they are, and we could, lift the demo delay, we could do that as well. I feel so,
Colin, could I ask a quick question?
sure,
So the unfinished sort of portion of the main house. I just want to know what that was. What is it used for, like, right now? It's just, all I heard was it's unfinished, but it's been part of the house for some number of years, right? So could the applicant just explain what is it used for? What does it look like on the inside?
It looks like just, wood. It's like a barn inside. We have, Papa Shot and kids things for them to go play and hang out in there for, but it's literally just the clapboards on the outside with wind blowing through. I don't know if maybe they used it as a barn or a place to store, things outside. No insulation, nothing of that sort in there. It has
Is
a
it like-
plywood. And the foundation on the outside edges is actually brick. It's not, the big granite foundation that the main house is underneath. There's actually brick underneath.
Is it like
Is it a
post-
dirt floor or anything on the inside? Is it dirt? Is it wood?
Plywood. It's
Plywood?
plywood. And
Okay.
yes, it is supposed to be.
Because is it possible it was is there any indication it was a kitchen, like a summer kitchen or a root cellar or anything?
Maybe a root
Anything?
cellar.
It just seems weird that it would be there and it doesn't seem to have any use. So it must have had a use, right?
Our best guess is maybe some goats or something back in the day. I don't know.
Goats.
Yeah. No, there's no indication of any kind of, fireplace or cooking
Fireplace.
apparatus in there. No,
Okay.
there is, a boarded up, it appears to be a doorway where our current bathroom is when we bought the house, but other than that, it's really just an unfinished bare wood structure
Storage, yeah.
inside.
Sorry, Chris,
Yeah,
no good answer, other than so
No.
storage.
the kids use it more than anyone.
So, I'm sorry, did someone make a motion that the plans?
I was about to.
submitted- Oh, you're about to?
Yes, I
Was,
make a motion.
okay, that was Andrew. So Andrew, so the motion that the plans as submitted tonight are acceptable and, the demo delay would be lifted.
Yes.
Is there a second for that motion? Okay, that looks like Scott, right? Okay. So what do you say, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, Biff?
Yes.
Okay, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. Chris Fay?
Yeah, reluctantly, yes.
Okay, that's still a yes. Alan?
Yes.
Thank you. Ed?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Sutton? Yes. Okay. And, might as well make it unanimous. I think it'll be fine. It seems like you're doing a great job of maintaining the historic nature of the main house and, I think overall the neighborhood probably will not be opposed to replacing that shed with something a little more up to date, shall we say.
Less farming.
So Heather, thank you for coming in despite your injury or whatever it is, and appreciate the time and I don't know if you need to go before any of the board, CBA or anything, but as a result of these decisions, the building commission will be notified that there is no demo delay on that.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate
Okay,
it.
you're welcome. Okay, I saw Ms. Mead hanging out in the hall outside. Is she gonna sweep in and whisk us away?
What I do those?
Well, how do you know that?
Because I read the reports when they come in.
He does his homework.
It's in.
I thought I, most of it. I missed that. Like everything. Because I just.
It's a shed.
Thank you very much.
I think there's coming upstairs. Might be.
Jason.
I don't want to come out, because I know those coming out when I was. I did get you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is 59 Federal Street, which is a ECOT historical report request. Looks like we have Attorney Mead and another associate of NTC here to discuss it. Is that correct?
Oh, this is Matt Lang from Scott Brown's office.
Oh, okay. That's the architect's office, I presume, right? Okay, let me just get my act together here. Just give me one moment. Okay, so this is basically, just so everyone's on the same page, a request for an advisory review there. I guess it's because of a couple of things, mainly the percentage of change, whatever, you need a special permit from the ZBA, correct? And, so you're asking the historical commission to generate a report for the ZBA pursuant to these plans. I don't think there's much more I need to say about it. What would you like to say about, the property and, the plans?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. For the record, Lisa Mead, the town and cost of 30 Green Street in the report. And with me this evening is Matt Langes from Scott Brown's office. Scott's also here, as well as my colleague, Ben Roberts. The applicant is Windward Shaw LLC, who's George Hazeltine is the principal of. And he's doing this on behalf of the buyers of the property. So as the chair suggested, this is the application for an advisory review. We require actually 2 special permits from the ZBA. One is the DCOD special permit, as well as a special permit for non-conformities because of the upward extension of the rear yard, side yard setback on the rear addition. So the applicant proposes to renovate the existing structure and construct an addition on the rear and remove the accessory structure and construct a new accessory structure. So there's a garage in the back. We're proposing to take down and replace with a new structure in the back. Importantly, the applications you're gonna see in a little bit, and Matt will review with you, is that the goal is to restore the architectural detail to this home, remove the one-story addition, one of the one-story additions on the left, and one-story addition on the right, and replace the one-story addition on the right, which is the entry. It's a bathroom now that will be part of an entry. And then there's a one-story addition in the rear, also proposed to be removed. The one-story addition on the side, as I said, well, it's a sun porch right now. It's kind of oddly there, and there's some problems with it physically, which we're going to talk about. And then the proposal is to replace the one-story addition on the side. We're here because the DCOD removal here is 47.35% of the exterior walls. That sounds a lot worse than it actually is. Of that, 27.2% are these one-story additions. So if we weren't removing the one-story additions, so to speak, it would be 20% removal, which counts for some of the changes in the window sizes, which you're going to talk about, but mostly the covering up of that rear elevation for the 2-story addition that goes in the back. The applicant requests the commission submit that report, as the chair suggested, to the city, to the zoning board. So if you go to the next slide, please, Caitlin, thank you. The structure was constructed around 1890, according to the district data sheets, where it's listed as contributory, in 1865, according to the assessor's records. There is no Form B for the project. We think 1890 appears to be more accurate, given that the structure doesn't appear on the 1888 Sanborn maps, but does appear on the 1894 Sanborn maps. And so this is the structure right here, but if you can just hang on right there for a second. So the accessory structure, there are accessory structures that appear at various times in the backyard. But where the accessory structure is right now, we actually have from the assessor's record that the current was built in 1988. And so it is not historic, it's not 100 years old, and certainly not listed as contributory on the district data sheets.
Which, help me orientation here, which way is north, or like Federal Street, is it, I assume the one going from the lower left to the top middle? That's Federal?
Right, so
there?
Federal Street is right in the middle,
Okay,
right? And then you're going down.
so which direction is High Street? Toward
Right,
the bottom?
behind to the bottom.
Okay, so this is like looking toward the river in a way. or-
That's correct.
Okay,
If you're traveling down, you'd be going down the
Okay.
river from the
Okay.
bottom of the page to the top of the
okay,
page.
got it.
Is
Thank you.
towards the river. So you see Horton Street in the back there,
No,
right?
I can't read the
Okay.
text from here. That's my problem.
Just to give you an idea, so Prospect Street is the next block.
Yeah.
And what I'm gonna show, just as this little piece of reference, so you see the long building in the middle, of that, of the
Yes,
sheet there? That actually exists on a couple of the Sanborn maps. It's a long brick building. It's now used David Hall owns that property, it's rental property, 72 Prospect, that he's maintained that building, it's now garages that he uses back there. So in any event, if you go to the next slide, Caitlin. So, you're gonna see this property, so this is the 1888 Sanborn map, so the property is on the inset of the red triangle at the top, but the structure doesn't exist there yet. So if you go to the next slide, this is when it shows up. So here's the 1894 Sanborn map, and you can see Prospect Street at the top of the page, Horton Street below it. And it's part of a larger parcel at this time. There are actually 3 main structures on it, and then there's a building in the back. Next slide, please. And this is the 1900 Sanborn map, and you can see down towards the middle bottom of the page, you see the structure there. Still all part of one, and again, you've got a different structure in the rear that's not actually, it's on a different lot. I think that calls it a woodshed, maybe. Next slide, please. And then you have the structure, this is the 1906 Sanborn map, and you can see the structure down on the left of the page. Next slide, please. And then here's the 1914 Sanborn map. On these last two, you can see that side porch on the left that we're proposing to take off doesn't exist on these older maps. And so that's the 1914 Sanborn map. And you can see that the shed, where the current accessory structure is in the back left, but you can see that shed that exists on there then is in the back right. So they kind of put a shed where it's convenient in the back. Next slide. And here's a 1924 assessor's map. You've got the structure up front, and then there's a different accessory building in the back that's different than the one that's there today, which is more square. Next slide, please. So here's the site plan, and you can see in the red the proposed areas to be removed. So if you're on Federal Street looking at the building to the left, you see that sun porch that's proposed to be removed. If you look at the right, where it's kind of a peachish color, it's got a red outline, so the existing, that's a bathroom inside there, just to identify it, so when we talk about our engineer's report, that's proposed to be removed and then replaced in a slightly smaller footprint. And then in the rear is that 1-story addition that currently has, we'll show you some photos in a minute, currently has a handicap ramp that runs up into it in that 1-story addition in the back. If you could just hold it here for a second. So we had a professional engineer, structural engineer, Fred Emanuel, and Deb and Christian go in of Emanuel Engineering and review these additions in the property. 2 of the existing additions are in poor condition. The framing size on the sun porch roof, that's on the left side, is inadequate for sliding snow and is subject to collapse. You're gonna see some photos of that in a minute. And the weight of the porch is assumed to exceed the soil bearing capacity, is right on top of the soil, which we'll show you in a minute. I think it probably was built really as a porch and just kind of held up by inappropriate foundations. The other addition on the right, which is a bathroom, that's the one on the right in the front. It has noticeable slope caused by inadequate support. We're going to show you that. And at least one of the CMU support appears to be leaning, and a timber post with signs of significant rot touches the ground, where the building code requires at least 8 inches of clearance. He says both additions would require significant time and resources to bring into code compliance when compared to complete demolition of those particular sections. So if you go to the next slide, please. So here's some existing photographs. This is head on. I want to point out that this house has none of the original architectural details related to the style that it is, that Matt's going to go over in a minute. It's clad in vinyl. There's basically vinyl everywhere. And when you see we have a photo, an older photo where the There's a lot of really great detail, and you'll see when Matt reviews the plans, how we're proposing to restore that. I might add, bless you, I might add, that the addition in the rear that we propose to remove is very close to the lot line, and so it's at least gonna gain a little bit of more distance, away from the side lot line.
Pardon me, interruption, you talked about the structural handicaps, let's just say, of the additions in the front, did you talk about that addition in the back?
That's the one I was talking about. There's handicap access into the addition in the back,
Right,
right?
and did I somehow miss the discussion of like its foundation and all that?
Oh, no, it's not, it's not even close to as severe as the others in the front, but it's
Okay.
definitely not up to, what today's standards would be. It's a standard 8-inch block foundation. I would assume probably 2x6 rafters. It's like a volume ceiling inside, so, drastically undersized from what it should be.
And, Lisa, pardon, turn me in, or
Yeah,
Lisa,
call me Lisa, please.
huh?
Go ahead, call me.
Okay, we're able to find out if that back addition was significantly later than the main body of the house?
So I don't know if it's significantly later, it's certainly later than the main body of the house, but there is an addition that is on the back at various times.
Right, okay,
That's what I know, right?
pardon the interruption.
No, that's fine.
Proceed.
Next slide, please. So here's that sun porch, with the lattice work around the bottom. And there's kind of an angle so this is gonna improve the sideline setback dramatically. We can go back to the site plan in a minute. And it's gonna give some relief to the neighbors to the left, which they're very happy about. And so the setback from the further addition that's gonna stay, there's a little lip in the back that's gonna stay, will be increased to 1.5 feet.
So this windowed thing and that's in the foreground, that's one of the pieces being.
Right, that's the sun porch that has some significant problems, and we'll show you some photos.
All right, so that one is removed and not rebuilt, right?
Pardon me?
It's to be removed and not rebuilt.
That's correct, and it does not appear on a
Yeah.
number of the earlier
Okay,
Sandor maps. Next slide, please. So here's that one-story addition in the back that has the handicap
Right.
access into it, which we're proposing to remove. I think also what's important, you're gonna see on Matt's drawings, is our proposal is to put a two-story addition on this back to remove that one story. But that two-story addition is not gonna be visible from the front
Mhm.
of this, so you just only see the main box and the L when you're looking at it from the front. The proposed addition will remain subservient, of course, to the main structure. And Matt will show you that a little bit more.
Sorry, another quick question. I assume there's a cellar under the main house.
Under the main house.
Does it also go into that little addition?
It's, inaccessible to the interior. There's, under this.
Under the little
holes in the
one-story
addition,
addition.
it's totally blocked in.
So you can't tell, the foundation doesn't connect is what the
Right,
question is.
You're saying, is it accessible from the
No.
inside, is there anything underneath
I'm
it?
just asking if there's a basically.
Is this-
There
is
is,
And
There's no-
does the cellar extend to
It
underneath
did
that?
not,
Okay,
that's
that's
closed off from the
That was-
basement under
that's
the main house.
kind of what I
Yeah,
expected.
Next slide, please. There's the garage we propose to remove
Right.
and rebuild. Next slide. So as I said earlier, the framing is inadequate, the sun porch, the way you see is the soil bearing capacity. There's also similar structural issues with the first floor bathroom. And we'll go on to that next, please.
And CMU, I know it's something units, maybe you could tell us what CMU stands for.
Concrete masonry unit,
I think that sounds. right.
Concrete blocks.
quickly look at,
Yeah.
amazing.
I know, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Concrete, yeah, the concrete blocks.
Yeah.
Well, I knew that, I was just saying if you.
It was 8x16 center block.
That was a test.
Yeah,
I always want to say cinder block units, but they're concrete
No.
masonry units. So, so here you can see, and we provided all this to you in our filing, but you can see the porch framing and then the timber columns there. And then you can see the sinking of the blocks underneath. And then there's the slope in the floor. So you can see the level goes up and it's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches slope from the house out to the
Previous door, that's it.
next slide, please. And then you've got the, that's under the sun porch, the roof rafters, the undersized roof rafters on the left. And the leaning CMU at the bathroom, that's the addition on the right. And then there's an old pair of sneakers under the,
Which, there was a preservation restriction.
Right,
on
exactly.
debris.
I think they're canvas, not
I was just
leather,
gonna
so it might be okay, right?
Okay.
Right. Next slide, please. So as I said, Matt will talk about the restoration of the architectural detail, particularly the Victorian features. It's gonna improve the the distance between the home and the neighboring property. It will improve dramatically the appearance of the home from Federal Street. In fact, it won't impact it negatively. And as I noted earlier, the two-story addition that's proposed to be in the back will be subservient to the main structure. So if you go to the next slide. So here's a house, here's the house, and you can see a little bit, you can see the scallop siding at the top and along the edges. I think it's a good representative of what it used to look like, or what it may still look like underneath the siding, we don't know. But that detail's all proposed to be restored. So, with that, I'm gonna turn it over to, Matt to go through the architectural plans.
Evening, everyone. Matt Regis, Scott Brown Architects. Peyton, would you mind going back to that just quickly? So we were really excited when we got this photo. This is a photo that was left by the previous tenant, a previous owner, I should say. And in one way or another, you know, there's a lot of details here that we're either copying or mimicking. This flare that's at the second floor, the wood brackets, we're maintaining sort of over that corner in the bay. The differentiation of materials, how it sort of breaks up vertically. There's obviously some Victorian window patterns, so there's a lot of inspiration that we took from here and, you know, proposed, or at least proposing in a similar way with our design. Next slide, please, Katie. So before I get into this, I think it's worth mentioning that not very different than a lot of the historic projects that we've presented in the past. It's always, you know, our first goal to maintain as much of the existing structure as possible. And from a floor plan perspective, that's usually pretty easy to do, even incorporating these sun porches into the design. But before we got too far, we wanted to look at the structure because we had noticed there's some significant settling on the inside. So I had went out with a manual that day and took all of these photos. So I'm pretty familiar with everything that is going on there. So the left porch, as you can see on the top drawing, the existing drawing on the existing front elevation, it definitely has some sort of improper footing, whether that's not deep enough and it's heaving, or it's just not adequately sized. It's probably a combination of both. The floor framing is actually 2x or 2x2s or 2x4s on the flat. So it's almost like a trampoline in there, really. And they're at like 24 inches on center. It's about a 6-foot span. There's probably 2 or 3 inches of difference from one side to the other. And there's also significant settling, obviously. So it's starting to pull away from the house, both at where the rafters attach and where the floor attaches. The windows and sills, interior beadboard and walls, and ceiling are all pretty damaged because it's starting to pull away. And you know, the roof framing is undersized, but that's usually an easier thing to fix. It's harder though to sort of address that from a first floor framing perspective. In a similar fashion, the porch on the right side where the existing bathroom is, instead of having improper footings, it has no footings. I mean, it's essentially an 8-inch tree trunk and some CMU that's propped up and is cracking and failing and sort of falling over. So the wood is sitting on dirt, obviously, the block has failed, and there's similar settling and cracking on the interior of the finishes. And again, same signs with pulling away. The floor joists are there, from what I can tell, are 2x4s. This time they're on their side, which is a little bit better, but drastically undersized from, you know, what we would call up today. And we're no stranger to any of these, you know, details, I guess you could say, from older houses. And we've fixed this a bunch of times. I think, you know, with how we would approach this in an ideal scenario would be to prop up the existing floor framing by putting a beam in, ripping out anything that's underneath it, get an excavator in there, dig deep, put a new footing, put a new wall, press the framing on, call it a day. But the problem is, there's only about 16 or 18 inches from where the floor framing starts to where grade is. So there's just not enough room to get real equipment in there in order to dig down deep enough. So the alternate option would be to hand dig and to dig sonotubes, do a similar thing, prop up the floor. Make sure it's sort of level and plumb, put it back down on proper footings, similar thing. There's only about 16 inches of space, so you have to find a really skinny excavator to get down there and do that. And the third fix is sort of not really a fix because it's really practical to somehow replace the floor framing, but maintain the existing wall that's there and also prop it up and either sister the joists that are there or completely replace it, which is from a construction standpoint, is not really feasible. So that sort of brings us to where we are in the design that we have before you tonight. So we knew that no matter what addition that we were gonna be adding in the rear, that these porches, in our opinion, had to come down because dealing with them structurally isn't. If we decided to keep them, we would need to rebuild them because the possibility of them either failing or falling over is high regardless of which direction we decided to go in as far as fixing it. So now that I've sort of spent 10 minutes of all the negative things about this, the thing that there's a ton of positives with this project and we're really excited about it because it allows us to remove the porch on the left, which I don't think has any sort of accurate or historic relevance to what this Victorian structure was originally constructed to be. And it also allows us to rebuild that porch on the right and pinch it in a little bit. And the reason why that's important is because it allows that roof to sort of die nice and clean into that side gable that's poking out towards the driveway. In addition to that, we're, similarly to the existing photo that was given to us from the previous owner, there's a flare at the mid height, so that was original. We're mimicking that with scallop shingles instead of the offset shakes that's shown. There's the existing wood brackets at the bay, which we're maintaining. The siding variation, again, is the same thing. We're varying between clapboard siding and scallops in a few different places as you continue up the elevation. We're doing 2/1 windows, which is very indicative of a Victorian style exterior. The crown, the corner board, bed molding, all that stuff we're bringing back. It currently has either little of that or none of that, especially at the main gables. And you can't really see it that well in this drawing, but the goal with adding that right porch is to still make it feel like a porch. It'll be conditioned space, but we're adding some horizontal lattice underneath to sort of, still have that read, at least from the front elevation, as a porch still.
But it's a bathroom now.
It's currently a bathroom and it's exposed framing underneath. I mean, there's a little bit of insulation, but that'll be a proper wall, proper concrete frost wall in this lattice, will likely be in front of it. The wall will probably be painted black. But just a little bit of a different detail rather than continuing that brick all the way around. It feels in our brains still like a porch, so we wanted to mimic that in a subtle way.
Except Matt, right? So here, now she's blown it up, you can see that there is actually a little bit of a flare in the middle there where that scallop shingling is. Is it got any of the flare today? Or is it, they just make it flat?
They need it flat, yeah, so I would assume that that's been removed. And the
Interesting.
the vinyl just essentially right over.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember, can you see I know you can see the scallop shingles in the old photograph.
See the flare too.
You can see the flare.
Yeah,
too.
can you go
Okay.
back to the photo?
Yeah, as long as we're on the photo, I'll just quickly mention that when I first saw these plans, was before I saw the photo.
Right.
And I was saying,
You can't really see the
are these
angles much, but-
conjectural
Yeah,
changes they're
look
making?
there, right there.
And then, then I saw the photos like, oh, okay, so that's great, you have actual evidence, which is
Right.
what the standards, call for, that, you shouldn't just guess.
You can
Right.
still see those peeking out from the,
Oh, really?
peeking out from the vinyl siding there.
But that's
Oh,
that
so
thing?
it's
or-
covered
yeah,
up.
that's-
Oh, covered up.
Yeah.
front door of the new proposed, is it recessed into the front facade? Or is it
It's just the,
flush with the existing front?
so it's not flush with the bay, it's flush with where the bay ends, if that makes sense. So where this 45-degree angle bay comes back, that's where this wall is, so this wall is pushed back about 2 feet from this wall. Next slide. So this is a better view of the step back of the right porch and how it sort of allows this gable to be more prominent. We're also using it as an opportunity to center that upper window. There's an existing window that's up in the higher part of that gable that is this like sort of gridded stained glass window, which we are maintaining. And you can see on the sort of as it wraps that bay, that white cedar scallop wrapping the corner and you know, dining into a metal accent roof over this side right porch. And then the older addition, which is removed, and on the lower drawing, the dotted blue line is the demarcation of the newer addition on the right, and then obviously the existing main box on the left side. Next slide, please, Dave. So we explored a ton of options, and we even explored a flat roof option, and it sort of quickly came and went because although it helped from a DCOD perspective and it really lowered our percentage, it really didn't have any relation to Victorian shape or style or sort of didn't stem from a logical place from something that would, in our minds, look like it was always there. So because it didn't have, you know, that Victorian style of massing, what we did instead is use the existing roof lines as a point to stem from. So the addition, you know, pinches in about 18 inches on either side, but it also drops about 2.5 feet from the main ridge to the addition ridge. And we wouldn't normally push, you know, off with an addition of this style. We would normally keep all the eave lines at the same height, but it would produce a significantly taller gable. So it's a little bit different how we propose this in the sense that this gable is shrunk down, but what that allowed us to do is sort of pop these dormers that are on the left and right elevations and just keep the overall massing of this addition down a bit more. Next slide, please. So this is the final elevation. This is the left side. This is, you know, the side that's closest to the lot line. So there's, even though we're removing that porch and it's improving the distance to the lot line, we're also choosing to go with a little bit less fenestration or punches for openings for privacy. But in general, this space feels, you know, a little bit better in the sense that it has some more breathing room from where the current lot line is. And then in a general sort of, you know, materials are pretty consistent with a lot of what we've done in the past. Rot resistant trim, architectural shingles, white cedar shakes. We're proposing a fiber cement for the clapboard, 7/8 simulated divided light double hungs, and also have a couple of accent metal roofing on the bay on the opposite side, and chamfered wood columns, you know, trying to use as many high quality materials as we can to rich in the exterior.
What is it, the 7/8 referred to?
The 7/8, sorry, the simulated divided light, the width.
Oh, 7/8 of an inch width of the.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, yeah. Next slide, please. So from a square footage standpoint, before I get into the DCOD, the existing total is about 1,949 square feet, which incorporates some portion of the existing walk-up attic. Our proposed total is 2,310, which removes that walk-up attic. That would be just essentially a pull down with storage. So our net difference is 361 square feet. The garage bonus room, which is on the following page, or I believe on the following page, is an additional 438 square feet. So we're essentially removing any access to the attic and putting any auxiliary space for an office or you know, a bonus room above the garage. So the DCOD is something, this calculation is something that we battle with every time. Lisa, I mentioned this before, it seems big from a percentage standpoint, but if you just removed the porches, not even including the single addition in the back, it accounts for over 14% of the total of what we're asking for. So that would bring us down to about 994 square feet. And that doesn't include the addition of the back, but it's a significant portion of what we're, what we're asking for. So that if you just remove those two pieces, it brings us closer to 33%, which it's just a huge chunk of that. I think it's worth mentioning. And we even tried to get it lower. Like I said, we explored a flat roof. We even explored keeping part of, which I think, George probably would have had a very hard time doing, is keeping part of that single story roof and wall in place and just chopping half of it off. We said, like, let's just try to see if we can do that. But once you sort of dive a little bit deeper into the foundation and what's happening with the framing, you would likely be replacing all of that anyways because it's drastically undersized. So keeping half of the addition in the back and also removing half of it is just sort of a nightmare from a construction standpoint. And then obviously the flat roof has no relation to any sort of Victorian style. And I think it's also worth mentioning, although you folks didn't see the other 10 passes that we've had at this, like every project, I think our goal is to try to have a very low impact from a DCOD perspective, but selfishly, and I know Scott, we don't want to sacrifice the character. And I would sort of, like walking by this when it's complete, I want to feel like as a designer, and I know Scott believes this too, that it's as close to the original or at least in our minds better than what is there now and is as close to the original as possible. And we've made moves that have, unfortunately, from a percentage standpoint, not go in our favor or not help our case because it increases it. But I would rather push for those details that I think really matter and that I believe would be successful to this project. And that's what I think we've done here tonight. Thank you.
It sounds like, just to sum up in one sentence, what you would just said in a paragraph, that you were willing to sacrifice the square footage for the sake of a better design.
Right.
A better design that we think maintains the historic.
Yeah,
fabric of
that's right.
that, right.
That was kind of implied in the term better.
And just, if you go to the next slide, we have some contextual photographs of the commission. So this is 57 and Prospect Federal Street, and then 59 Prospect. So that's the corner structure. Next slide.
And the subject is 159
Yes, this is 59.
is the one we're talking about.
Correct.
Not 59 Prospect.
No, we're 50, right, we're talking about 59
Yeah.
Federal.
Right.
That happened to be 59 Prospect
Oh, I see.
and
Yeah.
57.
Okay, so there's 59 for the white one. Yeah, I
Correct.
recognize the lovely sun
Yeah.
porch.
And so where we were just where we're behind.
Yeah.
Right. And so then you have going down, going up Federal Street. You see the old firehouse at 65.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so that's
So this is looking up towards high, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Next slide, please. And then this is 82, 84, it's the opposite side of the street.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. And then again, the opposite side of the street, moving on up. And that's Prospect Street in the background. Next slide, please. That's it. All right. So with that, we appreciate any comments you have and the board's recommendation to the CPA.
Okay, well, so my fellow board members, what we've got to do, let's say is write this advisory report for the ZBA. I'd like to know if you have any specific things you want to be sure to include in that about either the history or what any impact, negative or positive, that you feel these plans might bring about.
It
So
sounds
can I
like-
put that in the report?
It sounds like one of the things you're up against is that. The removal of certain percentage of these walls. I think those two. Slope structures that have been tacked on, I mean, they have no. To me, they have no importance in the historic structure itself, so I think removing those is actually
Good thing.
a win. Whether or not you were to do the other things, I think the discovery of those photos is pretty great. I mean, you can tell from now knowing that it's 1890 and that you can see that bracket. I mean, it's like basically telling you what it looks like under there. When you look to the houses to the left, right, you see some of the same details. So I think if the intent is to bring those back, I think that's, that's a great win. And I don't see any detriment in demolition of those smaller out structures. The back of it, I think it's well, hidden, and those homes are all close enough together. That's not gonna be, not gonna be something that, you're gonna see very, very well from the street side. I'm not saying that many things that I could say negatively about the project.
Okay, thanks, downstairs. Is it Matt? Yeah, quick question. I noticed you've changed the fenestration on the second floor on the front. And my semi-educated guess is that what you're proposing is more likely, is that in the photo? Are they like that? Cause to me, it seems more likely they would have been. But I don't know, does the photo show the windows, the fenestration pattern in the front, or is it kind of?
It's only, you're saying the grill pattern?
No, I'm talking about
No, the
the
windows,
actual window
the
opening.
actual windows, if you go to the,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's only two I mean, this window is 2/2,
Right.
and the only two that had any bars.
he's talking about the
Keep up
one
with
and the double.
Yeah,
So he's
there's-
talking about
I'm
the
sorry,
one
yes,
and
it
the
does
double.
show 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yes, right, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if you get, well, it'd be interesting to see when you're, well, I don't know if you're gonna take the client, well, yeah, we'll take the vinyl off. Be interesting to see if that was the original plan or not. Just seems odd that would, in that age, that would have been a double window like that.
It's kind of it's like a side hall, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean,
Yeah.
those often they're off, not centered like that because of that side hall. So maybe has something to do with it. It might have lined up too with the bay window and the architectural elements above it.
Anyway, I
Curious.
just wondered.
I think it does look better centered though, but that's.
Yeah. Yeah, any, Ben, any comments, thoughts, anything you wanna make sure that the report includes? And this,
I might just have one
Yeah.
comment.
speak.
Caitlin, would you be able to pull up a photograph of the front of the house? There's just a detail that I see that is not in the new version. Okay, could you go up closer? What I'm looking at is right on the corner of where the roof and eaves are. There's a little detail on
Yeah.
both sides of that. Okay,
That's sort of a bracket
yeah, this is it right
on the
here.
overhang.
That's one.
Oh,
of
you
them
mean
right
that
there.
goes
Yeah.
in like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just curious, when you look at the proposal, those are gone and
Hmm.
there's like a return on both sides. I was just curious why you were taking those two.
Yeah, I was curious about that too, and I'll just add, there's also brackets that that show in the existing and so forth that I think are not in your revised plan. So I
Yeah.
want you, can you address that?
Again, yep, you might go into the proposed elevation again. Yeah, perfect. So, this is sort of, there's a lot of houses and especially if you start driving down Horton Street, there's sort of, every Victorian has like its opportunity to like flare. It's got its own like thing, its own character.
Right.
And what we thought was the most important of that is this sort of banding that was
Right.
happening with the existing house. Where we thought that we could sort of lose that detail a little bit is and go to something that's a bit more traditional is at these eaves, because we wanted the eave to be a bit more pronounced. And we would be we're essentially proposing a similar style roof on the back, so it sort of felt like an opportunity to make them all match. And that shape in style bracket and how it sort of interacts with the corner didn't feel appropriate with this return, so it was more of an aesthetic choice. But we sort of felt that if we're going a certain route with this Victorian style and what we're choosing to highlight, it was more or less the banding and not those brackets, but from a front elevation perspective, keeping the brackets that we thought were important, which were over the bay.
Caitlin, could you go back to the photo for a sec? Do we know when this photo was taken at all? This photo? Or do we not know?
When was the last time we had that snow? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, it might be, yeah.
Looks 60s.
I was gonna say late 50s, 60s, right? Don't you think? Yeah. I
Square photo too.
Might
so
actually
it's
say
okay.
it on
You
the
looking
back.
for that detail, huh?
Yeah,
That's right here.
yeah, you can see it, yeah. Yeah, so it's almost like, you're. For lack of a better term, reimagination of it, so to speak. It is, taking it from what may have been more slightly Italian in style to a more traditional Victorian. Whatever style,
Right.
yeah. So you're nodding, yeah, that's about the size.
That's about right. Yeah, I mean, it, with these brackets too, you can, again, with this Victorian style too, you can sort of go crazy and we've had some examples where that bracket sort of continues up the gable and choosing sort of when to do it. And this open rake detail, we just didn't think was something that really fit with what we were trying to propose in the back. So we sort of took what we were doing in the back and wrapped it around the front and let the bottom half be the more.
Anyone knows, do you remember what the district data sheet, what did it call out as the style?
So I think
Is it on
it's,
You're saying, see what they called it back then. Anyone need to know this? Come on, you read everything?
You want
The
the
district
style?
data sheet, what did the district data sheet look like?
Yeah, actually, go by this.
Huh?
Queen Anne,
Huh?
the district data sheet calls it Queen Anne.
Queen Anne, okay, interesting. I'll have to-
Right?
I'll have to refresh my.
But the one above it and below it is too, so maybe they just were writing in them.
Hmm.
And four of them.
I don't have my handbook with me to review what features of a Queen Anne are, but I will check it out. Okay,
One more comment.
yeah, go ahead.
Just going back to the brackets up there again. Just a comment that when I first saw the designs, I saw the flare that was there, I was like, was that always there? And I saw a picture, I was like, awesome, that's great, all right, good, that's perfect. Everything you said is like, this is good, I really like you, like really, doing some good work here. When it comes to the brackets, with actually something that's original that you're gonna take away. In more of another aesthetic, I think that. I kind of wish you wouldn't do that, but that's just my own opinion.
Yeah.
That there's actually a detail that still exists
Yeah.
there. After all these years.
Yeah.
And to make it look more of what we think it should be, that they're gonna be removed. Is my thoughts.
Can we just go back just to see if they're still there? Cause I don't, if you go to the front view.
I got them on Google Maps.
They're there, I just don't, yeah, they're definitely there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what we're referring to is this, in a couple places over that little overhang.
Yeah, I saw
And then
that,
there's
yeah.
also brackets up at the eaves.
Yeah.
Now, maybe there may have been more brackets that were removed when they put the final siding on, who knows?
Hmm.
And it is a little unusual to not have any return at the eave, so it's interesting, like, I agree with most of your design choices, frankly. When I say I agree, I mean, they're consistent with what, this is where I make my speech about, it's not what we like, not what we think is nice, it's what, what the standards, indicate is the way to go. Anyway, okay, any other, thoughts? And if, does anyone want to make a motion that the chair or some delegated person shall prepare a report for the ZBA? That's what we usually do in these cases. Is there such a motion?
I will make that motion.
Naturally, you would. Hang on a second. I don't know why I said that. My keyboard's not cooperating. Is there a second for that?
No second.
Chris, Mr. Sartell. Okay. Andrew,
Yes.
Mr. Biff Bouse,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
okay, Chris Fay,
Yes.
okay, Alan,
Yes,
thank you, Ed,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Sartell,
Yes.
okay. Chair is yes, I guess. I'll see if I can rope anyone into working with me on this. Okay, so we'll prepare a report, do you know when you are going before the ZBA?
Right, so we can't, we're submitting to the ZBA next week, right, so it's gonna
2
be,
weeks anyway, yeah.
it's 3 weeks
At least,
before we
yeah.
actually get there, right,
Okay.
because they've got to advertise.
Right, all right, that should give us
Okay.
enough time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time and coming in and all over that. We still have more to go.
Sean.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Do a good job. Okay. Okay, let's move right along. Under general business, we've got a couple of CP applications that people would like us to take a look at. I believe the first in line, with the Museum of Old Newbury. They've got an application for some work they want to do, so it's very similar to what we had a couple weeks ago. I believe both of these properties have preservation restrictions. So we need to make sure that what they're planning to do isn't anything that's gonna violate, yeah, that's fine, or result in an adverse impact to the historic structure. And then, they'll probably are you going to ask for our support? for the
I am.
application? Okay,
Yes.
so that'll be the second thing.
I'm gonna open with your support, with asking for your support. I'm Bethany Groftero, I'm the Executive Director of the Museum of Old Newbury. And we are respectfully seeking the support of the Historical Commission for our request for funding from the Newburyport Community Preservation Committee in the amount of $59,500. We are preparing to undertake the preservation and stabilization of the historic fences and the historic garden house, the 1808 Cushing House. So that is next slide, please. I just figured I'd get you a photo that was not in the deep Arctic freeze, just to cheer you up. The collapsed fence may bum you out a little
Is this
bit.
what it looks like still today? or-
No, I'll show you what it looks like today in a minute.
Okay.
Significant portions of the wooden fence, obviously made up of solid board tongue and groove with lattice and picket and other iterations have failed entirely and collapsed. They must be replaced entirely in kind. Portions of this fence are currently being held up by systems of support braces. Next photo, please. This is what it looks like today. That will not withstand a severe weather event. So that is, as found this week. Okay. Next, please. In addition, the section of lattice fencing that traditionally separated the cobble driveway, which, we recently, restored, collapsed in 2021 and was deemed unsalvageable. It was entirely rotted.
Where was it?
Most of the way through. So when you're going up the cobble driveway, it was on the left. And I'll show you the historic photo in a minute. It's
Okay,
weirdly, the Cushings didn't want you looking into their house from any angle except the front. So really, it kind of blocks off anybody that's coming up that driveway from into the main yard in the house.
interesting.
And there's, fortunately for us, so this historic fence portion was erected in 1865. And it was, and weirdly, it appears to have been lattice as early as 1900. So drawings of all of the fence sections were made by the WPA in 1936. And they were lucky enough to have Margaret Cushing, who was born in the house in 1855, still alive. So we can effectively trace the record of this
Okay.
fence to, 1870, whenever a 15-year-old would be looking at fencing.
Yeah, would I be right that the picture in the upper right here is taken kind of from, I'm standing with my back to the house? Looking
No,
towards that.
upper right, you're standing dangerously in the middle of Fruit Street and looking up our driveway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought that structure was sort of on the right side of the.
Now, we're looking
driveway.
at what we call the privy shed on the left, the back of the
Yeah.
privy shed, which, I will also note the carriage barn and privy shed are embarrassingly appealing in this photo,
Yeah.
but we are painting them this spring.
Okay.
And then there is a portion of the lattice fencing. The lattice fencing that you see on the top left is the way it looked
Okay.
before it collapsed. This was taken, I think, about 2000.
So if
One-
it hadn't collapsed, would it have shown up in that picture on the right one? Was that?
Yes, it would have.
Okay.
That is the gap where that lattice fencing was.
Oh, okay,
So the intention was always to put it back up, but it needs to be rebuilt entirely, which is, you can imagine is
oh, would it go like between those two buildings?
it would,
Oh, I see, now I get it.
it would, it's funny, sometimes when, something falls down, you go, oh, it's kind of nice not having it there, which is not in keeping with the historic nature of the property, so back up it goes. So again, during the Depression, the so-called John N. Cushing Place was studied in great detail. That's why you'll see John N. Cushing Place on the pictures I'm about to show you. And of course, Margaret Cushing, who refused to let any of them in the house, did allow them to measure and draw her garden fences and plantings. She was born in the house in 1855, as I said.
She's right, it was drawing the laundry inside.
Yeah, I mean, she hadn't, tidied up, didn't dust it in a while. Margaret Cushing never dusted in her life, let's be honest. Okay, next slide, please. And here she is, Margaret Cushing on the left, standing in front of one of her garden fences. Da-da-da. This is the plan that was done in 1936 for the WPA, and as you can see, careful, measured, detailed drawings of all the fencing exists there. And if you want to just go through the next slide, it not only has the overall plan,
Wow.
but details of individual
Yeah.
fencing. I mean, how lucky are we?
Yeah,
Individual fencing profiles, it has cap profiles, it has
Yeah.
everything spelled out for us.
they did it all.
Next, please. This is one of the other arches that shows you where it is in the plan, et cetera.
Reminiscent of those house drawings.
I know, isn't that beautiful? And then it's got this, what we call the garden seat, which is up against the Perkins building. That was actually, that has been significantly, restored.
It's the same as the
beautiful.
house drawings.
Yeah,
That's the same.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it actually is filed with the house.
Yeah.
Drawings. It is part of that project.
Okay.
Okay, so moving swiftly on, the iconic iron fence was built in 1890. In the photo on the left, it is seen here fairly new in 1894. It's remarkably stable for a fence of its age, but it too is in need of preservation to ensure another 135 years of useful life. Rust and paint loss are evident throughout, and now some of the joints that have actually broken, as you can see in the top right photo. The gates no longer close and are kept in place with bricks. So the iron fence will not be replaced, but will be restored by a firm that specializes in wrought iron, historic wrought iron fencing. Then move to the next slide. Obviously, the fences on this property have changed over time. I figured I had to throw in some good, sexy historic photos in there to keep your attention this late in the evening, so. What you're seeing on the left is the place, the weird place where on Fruit Street, where the iron fence ends and the wooden fence begins. There's no tie-in between the two. There doesn't seem to have been one when the metal fence was put in. It's always been awkward. And I'm not sure, it needs to be rethought. So we have a fence designer and preservation carpenter who are, it's gonna look the same from the outside, but they're gonna make it, it's just a magnet for moisture and mold. So we need a little bit more substantial post to manage that transition. What you see on the right, and actually on the next slide, in some detail, is how the entire fence at one time, this is actually a little Margaret Cushing in 1860 in the carriage.
The Fruit Street, looking down.
That's Fruit Street, yeah, looking down Fruit Street. We can go to the next slide. Oh, no, sorry, up one, that one. So this is the detail from that image, and you can see
Okay.
that the front fence was originally made of wooden picket, which is the current profile of some of the interior garden fences, so some of those fences remain. It also has a charming little like enclosure over the Fruit Street door, which I'm not asking for permission to replicate, but maybe someday. Okay, next please. The iconic 1934 garden house, which backs up against the High Street board fence, was designed by the architectural firm of Perry, Shaw and Hepburn, who were at that time working on colonial Williamsburg. It was also studied and documented. It backs up against the High Street board fence, as I said, and has several sections that have rotted. The lattice work also needs to be replaced. Show the next slide, please. It's also in fairly good condition, it just is in need of some repairs in some areas that are rotting, and obviously it sees a lot of weather. So that is really actually quite an
I was
architectural.
already seeing its little roof peeking over the fence as
Yeah.
we drive by.
Why don't you come to the garden and consider the inside?
Mhm.
I will say, since the landscape restoration, we've seen a lot more visitation. I think actually, honestly, since COVID, there's been a lot of people who didn't know that was there before and were kind of exploring the neighborhood in a way that they hadn't before. And we now see a lot more people who just pop in to come sit in the garden and read a book or whatever. Not this week, but at other times of the year. So that's really sort of been a fun discovery for people. And a historically important structure in and of itself, this house. Okay. Next, please. Just fairly quick. Elements of the Cushing House fencing were not only decorative but practical. A gate over the cobblestone drive, which is seen here, sort of, the hinges had failed, and so it is now leaning up against the existing fence. But it had a gate over the end of the driveway, which enhanced security and shielded equipment in the rear of the privy shed from view. It's because of the different elevations of the sidewalk and the drive from when it was installed. It's going to need to have a slight curve to it, so it does need to be rebuilt. But another thing where when the hinges failed, it was like, oh, it's kind of nice to not have a gate over the driveway, but it did, so we're gonna do it. Fence that now divides, we saw this, on the right-hand side. This is Margaret Cushing is on the left, can't really see her too well here, but behind them is a fence that separated the sort of utilitarian laundry
That's what we're
yard.
supposed to be looking at.
Yeah, sorry. The left-hand side is the utilitarian gate that used to be over the driveway. And the right-hand side is the women who are standing in front of the gate that separated the formal garden from the working courtyard in the house.
This was the biggest hat contest, I take it.
Yeah, I don't know, those hats there were bigger hats in this town. I think they're fairly conservative. They definitely got the smallest waist awards, they're tiny. So next, please. I just got some cheesecake shots of the garden fencing during sunshine and flowers. You can see what sort of mood I was in today. This is the fence, that fence that the women were leaning up against. This is that fence.
Oh, okay.
It separates what was once a drive that accessed the carriage barn, and the sort of utilitarian kitchen laundry yard from the formal garden on the left. Next, please. There's the summer house, there's the garden house.
Oh, so it doesn't actually have any walls.
No, it's just a
Roof.
it's just a folly. You're just supposed to go in and sit and think romantical Victorian thoughts, I think. All right, and scene. That's the end of my presentation.
Oh, I just.
It's just a nice picture. Well,
The
that
capture of the
actually
UFO or
collapsed.
something.
You can see that's the one that's being propped up, and it's still beautiful, so. Just thought you'd throw that in there.
All right, well, thank you, Bethany.
Thank you.
So as we did face last week, we have two decisions to make. The first is whether or not the effort to repair and, bring back to life the fence is gonna have an adverse impact. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me, quite the contrary, right? So decide that, and then you guys can decide if you want to lend your support to their application. So let me very quickly, okay, so that I already drafted a motion that NHC finds no adverse impact to the historical values of the structure and will permit the proposed repairs. Anyone care to make such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
right.
Sawtelle. Would anyone care to second it? Don't just jump right in, don't be shy.
I'll second it.
You're too late, Alan, Mr. Bernhardt already did it.
All right.
Speaking, Mr. Bernhardt, your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Beth, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, Scott, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Fay, your vote, is it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Alan,
Yes.
thank you. Ed,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Sartell,
Yes.
and I'll make it unanimous, so it doesn't contradict your preservation restriction. In fact, as I said before, this is really what it's implied in the preservation restriction, you're supposed to preserve it, which you're doing. Okay, would anyone care to make a motion that the NHC chair or delegate shall write a letter of support for their CPA application?
Make the motion.
Mr. Bernhardt chirps up with the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Powell seconds it. Oop, not DB, it's BB. Okay, stand by here. We get there, a little roll call. And we'll go in reverse order. The chair is yes, no.
Oh, yeah. Almost there.
Okay, Mr.
No.
Noy,
Can't you just tell them you gotta go?
you're.
It's almost done.
Alan, we need your vote, not your internal affairs.
Good, well, I'll be fine.
Alan?
He said.
Yes. Yes.
Your vote is yes? Okay.
Is that a formal finding?
Yeah, just about. Mr. Fay, your vote.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Bouse
Yes.
and Mr. Bernhardt.
Yes,
How's it feel?
thank you, it's nice.
Okay, so, when do you go before the CPC?
Next week,
Next week.
30th.
Well, but they don't actually decide right then and there.
No.
This is when you,
No.
yeah, right?
Just presentation.
We have an official representative.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
on
No, they don't
the-
decide that. I wish they did, but they do not decide that.
Yeah,
No, we have to hear everybody.
but we may be able to make that deadline anyway, but we have voted to lend our support to your application, so we'll write them a nice little note saying, please, we
Lovely.
encourage you to help them do what they need to do. over
And I will
there.
incorporate that into my presentation.
You may do so if you wish. Thank you, how do you pronounce your last name with hyphen and the whole?
No, Groff is my middle name. It's just, I use all three, so I was published as Groff, so it's Bethany Groff DeRoe.
Okay, oh, there's no hyphen. Oh, okay.
It's all
Well,
three, just to
Ms.
be
Groff DeRoe,
complicated.
thanks for coming in
Thank you.
and lending us your time. I just put this in the wrong place, or did I? No, I didn't. Is there? There is still somebody hiding. Oh, that's you.
No, I'm still here.
There he is.
Right.
He's very quietly
Quietly in the corner.
lurking in the background. I can only assume
Poor
that
guy.
you're representing the art association.
I am.
Okay, so the next item is the Newburyport Art Association. It's a very similar proposition. They also have a frustration restriction, so you're going through the exact same thing. We have to first decide to make sure what you're planning to do isn't contrary to the restriction. It sounds like not only is it not contrary, it sounds like it's part of preservation. And then whether or not we want to lend our support. So what have you got to tell us on your, I didn't catch your name.
All right, for the record, my name is Mac Shank. I'm the Vice President of the Newburyport Art Association. I have the pleasure of representing the Art Association in this application for the Community Preservation Committee in your ears. And also to ask for your support for our application with the CPC. What we're looking to do is, as you know, and I think everybody here knows, the Newburyport Art Association, the building at 65 Water Street. It's been a mainstay of the community for close on a few centuries, and the Art Association has owned the building since 1969. We've done several upgrades and have done our best to conserve and preserve the building. But we recently had an understanding that, we want to be good stewards and we want to move forward with the long-term sustainability of the building and ensuring its future. We had a engineering study done. It was actually a grant that we received in combination with the Mass Cultural Council to have a group come in and do an overall engineering study. As part of that, they did a comprehensive output of what needed to be done, as well as the costs that would be associated based on current market rates. Now, having said all that, one of the things that we decided to prioritize, you can go to the next, sorry. Should have been asking this. And by the way, for the record, Caitlin, amazing. Thank you very much, Caitlin, for all your help. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's an 18th century mercantile building. Its uses over time, around molasses trade, there was a dock and pier system on the back at one point before it was filled in, and it was used for the molasses trade. There's a counting house, there was a sail lock from what we're told, a machine shop, a grocery store, and at some point a pool room. I was never there, I promise. It was acquired by the Art Association in '69. And currently houses the Sergeant Hills and Hearts and Galleries, as well as the sales area, offices, and storage spaces. And you'll see outside of the footprint in the back, we also includes a sculpture garden that is a project that was a combination of support from the city as well as the Coast Guard who own the property. And also includes that little brick patio space that is within that envelope where we have exhibit and presentation areas.
So the yellow line is your plot, so to speak, so the Coast Guard owns where the.
Yeah, it's a, I want to say it's a deed restriction, but it's essentially an open use agreement with the Coast Guard to be able to use that space. They didn't feel there's any value to them, so they were more than willing to let us use it. So, next slide, please. Thank you. So, let's see. We're talking about the investments, the SRP. So this was the Mass Cultural Council Facilities Fund. We have a systems replacement plan created with Olive Branch Consulting Limited, they're out of New York. SRP provided comprehensive facilities analysis by engineers, architects, and construction consultants, outlining capital improvement projects, forecasting and prioritizing needs with a year-by-year breakdown of estimated costs. So the NAA is further prioritized into different phases. This is basically phase one. We looked at it and said, what's most important to us, and we're looking at the basement and the issues that we had in the basement in regards to the foundation and the support beams for the floor under, up above, as well as our heating bill is approximately anywhere from $850 to $1,000 a month. So we'd like to get some insulation in there if we can. What's proposed, well, let's move forward, forgive me.
So that whole study that generated that spreadsheet that I saw with all the breakdown of all the.
Exactly.
That was pretty impressive.
The next slide, please. Thank you. So this gives you an idea of what we're looking to do. There's reinforcement of deteriorated brick piers, and you can get an idea of now it comes down and then it's fading away and down to a point, as it were. I think there are actually two of those piers that exist. So then the next, the insulation that I talked about in the basement and the attic, we actually I showed an arrow that shows the attic roof. That's not what we're talking about in this particular instance, because that'll be blown insulation and blown cellulose insulation. We're looking at doing it for the attic floor, so it'd be the second floor side. Then,
So there's no insulation there either now?
No.
Oh, that could be one reason why you're.
No, it gets pretty cold. So in the stone foundation is areas of structural concern. It's brick and stone, mostly brick. But you can see there's, a lot of cracking going on. A lot of the pointing is coming loose. And then, of course, there's also some of the structural wood beams are starting to deteriorate, some has some cuts in them and that sort of thing. We'd like to bring them up and strengthen them. First part of all of this, so the overall ask, and there's a budget towards the end, but the overall ask is about $64,000. And that includes, and what was recommended by Olive Branch, having a structural engineer come in and give their best recommendations for how best to approach the damage that's there. So the folks that we talked with, and provided our report, obviously did their work, but this will be the next step. And then going beyond that with these estimates and those recommendations, we go forward and hire the necessary people to get the work done. And you can go to the next slide, please. So that basically just outlines exactly everything I just said. So once, if we can move forward and we receive the funds necessary, we go ahead, get a structural engineer in there, and then research and hire the licensed contractors before the necessary work. And it would be up to the contractors to get the necessary permits to perform that work, but we would ensure that, those permits were in hand before any work began.
So it looks like there's three, if I'm understanding correctly, there's the getting the engineering study, and then doing the structural repairs and finally the installation. So
That's correct.
those three.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we figured it'd make best sense to get everything done
I see that.
structurally in the
Okay.
basement. And then deal with the insulation in the basement and then go up to the
Yeah.
second floor spaces. We talked about it would be kind of blown cellulose insulation on the second floor side. In the basement, it would be batten fiberglass. So again, did I say 64,000? I meant 61,000. See, it's already getting cheaper. So we have every expectation that the work would be done if it all moves forward in any way, shape or form. Any work that we're allowed to get done would be accomplished before the end of the next fiscal year. Before the end of this fiscal year, forgive me. No, end of the next fiscal year. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time. Next slide, please.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I'm
I've
happy
got
to
a
answer any
question.
questions.
I've got a question.
Your question.
Yes,
I love the building. It's wonderful.
yes.
Brick. With the brick piers that are in the basement, as well as like the walls and everything, I'm sure you already noticed, but I just have to ask it.
No, it's good, all right.
You're gonna find somebody that knows lime mortar, how to do it?
Yep.
Okay, excellent, because that's the biggest mistake that's been made in restoration using masonry.
Yeah,
It's the wrong, cement,
line work.
you know, but yeah,
It's funny you should mention that because I'm a fan, I don't know if anybody else does it, but on YouTube, there are these young kids, and only young kids could do it, I think, who take on these homes in the UK that need a lot of work because it's probably so expensive. And one of the things this one young man did, he talked about that specifically, that it had to be lime mortar in order for it to work well.
yeah, it has to, if you use Portland, it destroys the bricks.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I'm glad you asked it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions or comments or thoughts? So, as before, if not, you gonna say something? Oh, just breathing, okay. That's fine. You're allowed to breathe. So, would anyone care to make a motion that we find that there's no adverse impact to this project and, it's permitted within the context of their preservation restriction?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Strauss. I'm sorry, that was Ed, right? Okay. Okay. Andrew,
Yes, back to normal again.
would you like to go back to the?
I'm good on these.
A bit,
Other ones are.
Mr. Clark. Okay, Mr. Fay online, your vote,
Yes.
the motion, okay, Alan?
I'm a member, so should I abstain from the Newburyport Association?
Forgive me, so in my past life, I was director of the health department in Gloucester, as well as the chairman of the Gloucester Conservation Commission. Unless you have a direct financial connection to the organization, you're fine.
Okay, yes,
You probably declared your membership, so you're fine.
Yes, he did, right, he did,
all right, yes.
parent.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
Sorry.
Mr. Neumer.
All habits die hard.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that actually, it's, and I appreciate actually bringing that up, Alan.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay, okay, so as expected, it's very encouraged this type of preservation work, obviously. And since he commented on the brickwork, I'll just comment that I noticed the Flemish bond pattern to those brick.
A what, sorry?
Flemish bond pattern to the.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, it's when it's a great way of doing it. Look, not only does it look like it's really strong, it's when they have the bricks alternate long and then I forget if they turn the other way and then it's. You'll see, in one of your pictures, you can see it quite clearly. Okay.
Excellent, thank you.
Now, does someone want to move that the chair or some delegate compose a letter of support that we think this is a good idea and the CPC should go for it.
I'll make that.
Was that you, Mr. Sartell? All right, Mr.
I'll
Sartell,
second
so
that.
moves, Mr. Bell seconds it. Bye-bye, Bethany.
Good night.
Okay. The chair is reluctantly in favor. Mr. Sartell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Ed Neumer,
Yes.
okay, Alan Marquis,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Fay,
Yes.
okay, Scott Clark,
Yes.
Biff Faust,
Yes.
and Andrew
You're
Bernhardt.
setting precedent, yes.
Well, Okay, with this next item, we can go very quickly. There's just I'll go ahead and make the motion that we continue this discussion of the preservation restriction for the GI. I think he was just gonna come back with the, oh, I'm sorry, you're still here waiting to hear what he said. Before I move on to the next thing, I should say, you're good to go.
Oh,
If you wanna go.
I was wondering.
You're within the, you don't violate your preservation restriction, you're good to go there. And we will compose a memo or a letter to the CPC encouraging them to support your work.
Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate all your
Thanks for
help.
coming in.
and-
I'm sorry, but that gets
All right, thanks.
punchy
Thank you
there.
very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You have all my sympathies.
Yeah. So I think they're gonna come back with those, remember there were some
Right.
amendments to the thing, but they just need more time. So it's a simple motion to continue that since it was on the agenda to, I believe they're gonna try for February 13th. So I'll go ahead and make the motion if I may.
Second.
And I see Mr. Biff seconds it. And since it's a session, the easy one, Andrew, I'll let you go
Yes.
first. Yeah. Okay, so the motion is to continue this discussion. Biff, you vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Fay?
Yes.
Okay, Alan?
Yes.
Thank you, Ed?
Yes.
Thank you, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, so that's simply continued. Was there any correspondence to go through? Now, we do have a vote to approve the minutes of the 9th of January. Thank you, Gretchen, for your attention to those. And it turns out, by the way, just a little side for Gretchen, I didn't realize that, I probably should have, that I had already covered that thing that we talked about in my report where I do that decisions and from the meeting, that memo that I sent out, I included some of those details of what the amendments were. So we're kind of belt and suspenders, we're covered both ways, so anyway. So that's the minutes from the 9th of January, let me get the early, if you were absent, I don't have.
I was
absent.
absent.
All right, who was here? I was
I was-
here.
I was here.
Biff was here, Alan was here,
Here.
Chris was here.
Yeah.
You were out, right?
I was out, yes.
I was
Okay.
out.
I was here.
Who said that? Scott, okay. But we have enough people then to approve them. So Scott, your vote?
Yep.
Okay, you're approving, okay. Excuse me. Huh?
Do we do a motion to, I
Oh,
don't think we did.
thank you,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 9th, 2025.
thank you, Biff.
Yes.
Scott, you want to second it?
Yeah, yes.
And you were already voting yes, I have you as voting yes, is that right, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, the chair is also a yes. Chris.
Yes.
Fay was here, right? So you're a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And Alan, you were here?
Yes. Yes.
You're a yes, good. And Biff?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes, plenty to approve those, so it can be published. Great. Mr. Andrew Port, did you have any updates?
I don't think so at the moment, thank you.
I'll not twist your arm for any, that's fine.
We're forgetting them.
Well, I did have an update from the chair. Each year, the ordinance states that we have to vote our, I think that they might call them officers, the only office we have are the chair and vice chair. I don't know if the secretary, made a question, taking notes and so forth. So, So be prepared to think about that. I'd like to do that vote at our next meeting if possible. It's supposed to be the beginning of the year, so we're just a little bit behind. And I would very much like to hand off chairman duties to someone. And so, but I'll offer the sort of training wheels option, if you will, to assist whoever might be willing to try that out. I'll be happy to assist you to any tips and tricks and cheats and whatever I've come to know over the past. It's been about 5 years. But I think I'd like to reclaim some of my time, so to speak, and, you know, give somebody else an opportunity to chair the board. So please do think about that seriously. Because I could use the time back, frankly, but I will be happy to assist whoever might step in. And
I just wanted to offer there as well, obviously, and myself, again, we're happy to sit down with you as well, and you know, just recap things like, you know, the meeting operation, voting requirements and things like that, and then also with the ordinances, you know, to have a refresher about the structure and permitting, you know, Glenn does a great job of following the ordinances and all that kind of, as we go through our process here, but if you are something that's, just, we can,
yeah, we won't just throw you in the deep end, right, Andy?
right.
Well, we might. No, we won't. Well, you know, just, what I will try to do, I think when they asked me to be chair, well, I think what happened was the prior chair, she really needed to get out of the job. And she was just waiting for any likely suspect, and she noticed I was actually writing stuff, and all that, oh, I think I got a hot prospect here. So she said, well, just try it for a few months. Well,
I'm not
here we
taking,
are.
I'm not paying those.
Here we are,
It's not necessarily a 5-year commitment,
yeah,
right?
it's not, a fight. Well, they vote every year, so not just be one. All right, so please do, seriously, do think of that. So unless there's other things anyone else wants to bring up, the chair would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll let somebody else do it.
Make a motion to adjourn.
That's Ed, and Mr. Sawtell seconds it, okay. Is there anyone opposed? Mr. Fay or Alan, anyone opposed to adjourning the meeting on that end?
No. Nope.
Okay, no, there are no votes in opposition, it's unanimous, that we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for your time. Wow.
Good night.
Good night, guys.